Every day's Casual Friday. That means Monday is Casual Monday. Tuesday, Casual Tuesday. Wednesday, Casual Hump Day. Thursday, Casual Thurs. That's what we call it. And Friday, Casual Shabbat. The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
It is Friday, June 16th, 2023. My name is Sam Seder. This is the five-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, your phone calls. And Astra Taylor, co-founder of the Debt Collective, on what next if the Supreme Court crushes Biden's student loan debt forgiveness program. Also on the program today, Supreme Court upholds Native American adoption law, and with it, probably a lot of other laws regarding Native Americans. Meanwhile, African leaders are in Ukraine pushing for peace. Iowa's Supreme Court splits 3-3, quashing a proposed 6-week ban on abortion, reverting back to its existing 20-week ban. Dusat Chowdhury, the first Muslim woman ever confirmed to the federal judiciary, and maybe even better, a civil rights attorney. Meanwhile, acting Labor Secretary Julie Su appears to have brokered a tentative deal between the longshoremen and management. Meanwhile, the Teamsters authorized a UPS strike. 97% of those voting voted to authorize the strike. This comes just a couple of days after they made a deal to get air conditioning in UPS trucks. Speaking of air conditioning, ocean warmth sets a record in May. June, meanwhile, set a record number of days of heat. Global warming just moving along at its own pace.
Just sell your houses, folks.
House Republicans announced banning free school lunches as their top 2024 priority.
Oh, good.
Meanwhile, DOJ releases results of a Minneapolis PD investigation which started in the wake of the George Floyd murder. Twitter shuts down an ad because it advocates for abortion rights.
Free speech.
Fox News filing a settlement with Abby Grossberg. She's that producer who was encouraged to lie in her testimony in the Dominion suit. Lastly, Boris Johnson leaving Parliament, exit left, right? I don't know. Parliament's round, isn't it?
Oh.
I don't know if it's round. You exit through like with Black Rod or something like that. Just they have weird traditions over there.
Yeah.
Disgraced. All that and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It is Friday. Casual Friday.
The most casual of them all, because we're doing all calls.
We're doing all calls, and we're going to take your calls in just a moment. So get your fingers ready to dial. Of course, we're streaming live on Rumble. If you're not familiar, we have a special Rumble call-in number, 646 257 3920. For the rest of you, 646-257-39 with
3920.
3920. Yeah. 3920.
Confuses me every time.
Yeah, I know. I can't even.
No, that wasn't confusing at all.
Nope. Just a reminder, also, 2 days ago, I think it was, the audio version of Against the Web, a cosmopolitan answer to the new right, Michael Brooks's book that he wrote and published in late April of 2020, is just 3 months before he passed away. is available now. I voiced it. He would have voiced it, obviously, had he been alive. And so it's available now for you to listen to. And if you never, for whatever reason, picked up that book, a lot of it's really focused on the IDW in many respects, which is now, not as operative. But he makes the point early in the book that the arguments, the framing, the perspective on it is evergreen. And when you're dealing with these types of folks, and I think it is, having just read it again, I don't know, a month ago, I guess it was, a month and a half ago.
Yeah, it's got about 8 reviews, it looks like, on Audible, and you'll be happy to know what both 5 stars for the story as well as the performance.
Oh, well, I did my best.
It's under $8, you can get it.
It did not, I did not, my impressions are not nearly what Michael's impressions are. I sort of did a vague impression of Michael doing an impression. So it's sort of like a 1/4 impression,
right,
of some of the
I feel like Michael would have wanted you to do his impression of you.
I know it. He didn't write it in the book. I couldn't add. I tried to ask, like, can I just freelance a couple of these things? And they're like, no, that's not appropriate. So check that out. We will put a link to it. But tell your friends. People may have missed it. Post it on, I guess, Twitter. Be that as it may, Twitter. Let's before we get into some of the other stories and your phone calls, first just check in with what's happening with the Biden crime family investigation.
Right. The Biden crime family. That rolls off the tongue.
It does, and we know they're a crime family because someone made a report to the FBI that said that they were. And the FBI obviously had investigated it, did not find the report credible, but
we all know the FBI, because of the Durham investigation, is woke, infiltrated by Marxists. I mean,
Hillary.
I don't even know why we have to bother to explain this to you guys.
Yes, we probably should. We should roll right into this.
It's clear.
The only problem is, with all the evidence that they have, is evidence sometimes is like sand. It slips through your fingers.
With respect to the tapes, look, it mentioned in the FBI form that the oligarch had 17 tapes of Biden, 2 with Joe Biden, accepting the bribe, that he used that as an insurance policy.
This oligarch was a high-ranking member or owner of Burisma?
Yes, that is exactly right. So
have you had any contact with him?
Unfortunately, nobody's had any contact with him for the last 3 years. The MSNBC makes fun of me when I said that there are a lot of people that were involved in the Biden shenanigans that are currently missing. But with respect to this oligarch, we think we know where he is. He just hasn't been seen in public in a long time. But
the Biden shenanigan family.
The Biden shenanigan, I mean...
The oligarch goes to a different school. You wouldn't know her.
My girlfriend exists. She lives in Ukraine.
Yeah.
she lives there, I promise.
She's actually modeling.
I don't have pictures of her.
Yeah.
I don't have recent pictures of her.
She's really busy.
The 17, when he says now the 17 phone conversation recordings, now that I hear that, it sounds fake. Like, it just sounds fake to me that an oligarch would say, like, I have 17 phone conversations.
I wrote that down too. It's like when liars get really specific because they think it makes it sound like they know what they're talking about.
And there's a little bit of like compensating by adding to the quantity what you don't have with the quality. Like, we're not going to hear any of these things. Like,
all 17 they admit that they're involved in a crime family.
Are some of them maybe like a bit too not interesting to listen to?
Yeah, right.
And those are the only conversations I ever recorded. Just those 17. I know off the top of my head. I have a spreadsheet. Here is Ron Johnson making it clear that just because we're talking about these audio tapes like they're real doesn't mean that they're real. But forget that he said that. Here's Newsmax. Ron Johnson.
Such an important story needs coverage. if indeed the 17 audio tapes exist, it would be in effect really a smoking gun for the big guy. So I want to ask you first.
Pause it. Incidentally, for those who are not steeped in Newsmax parlance, the big guy is Joe Biden's code name to receive the monies that were going through Hunter Biden. And I guess you could say that if the tapes exist, it's a smoking gun. The idea that, that
was his son's super secret nickname for his father, the big guy. I mean, come on, that sounds suspicious, right?
Big guy. But here we go. This would be the smoking gun. So let's talk about the smoking gun.
Such an important story needs coverage. If indeed the 17 audio tapes exist, it would be in effect really a smoking gun for the big guy. So I want to ask you first, Senator, do you think they
could you just, I'm sorry, go back and just look at the other anchor and just the sort of like the head shake he gives as we go through. It's really funny.
Such an important story needs coverage. If indeed the 17 audio tapes exist, it would be in effect really a smoking gun for the big guy. So I want to ask you first, Senator, do you think they exist? And if yes, how to obtain them?
We don't know. And Senator Grassley has never said they exist. He just said that there's an FBI report on a confidential human source, and that confidential human source says that the person he was talking to said that he taped. He recorded 17 times, 15 times with Hunter, twice with Joe Biden, but we don't know. But what Senator Grassley and I are asking questions is, what did the FBI do with that evidence?
First off, it's not evidence. It is hearsay. It is literally hearsay. Now, it may be true. But the evidence of a person saying that someone else says they have a tape is not evidence. It's not evidence.
It's just sad because I thought Republicans had gotten education about this with the whole P-tape fiasco and don't trust certain things. And it's like they forgot all of those lessons that were hard-earned.
I know it. But this is their P-tape, right? I mean, this is.
But there's no peeing on it. It's like, Hunter Biden gave his dad like $1 million to be a traitor to the United States.
But I think that most, the difference is that
he gave his dad. We should just be clear: $1 million to follow U.S. policy, stated policy,
right? I mean, most respectable Democrats now believe that the P-tape was fake, as we know now it was, or whatever. I don't think that there's going to be any elected Republican that backtracks on this, no matter what. They'll just go down until the news cycle moves on.
I, for one, will never believe that there isn't a P-tape out there. In fact, I think there's multiple ones. I actually think there's a defecation tape too. So
there's 17 different P-tapes, 15 of Trump peeing on someone and 2 of Trump getting peed on.
Different levels of hydration.
Jesus.
All right, we're going to get to your phone calls, 646-257-3920. Folks, let's let folks who have never called into the show have a couple of minutes head start, okay? So if you've called into the show before, let's let other people do it. I'm going to undo the voicemail right now. The phones are on, and we will get to that right after a couple words from our sponsors today. Here we go. First sponsor, Roan Clothing. This has been a huge boon for me, Roan Clothing. I keep buying more and more stuff. Men's closets were due for radical reinvention, and Roan stepped up to the challenge. Roan has something they call the Commuter Collection. It is the most comfortable, the most breathable, and flexible set of products known to man. And here's why they say it is. I'll tell you my own thing. It helps you get ready for any occasion. Well, that's true. That's basically it. For me, these the shirts in particular. Although I just bought a pair of shorts in addition to my pants. But the shirt, because pants you can wear anywhere, anyways. It seems to me. But shirts are a really tough thing. And these shirts are just so versatile. They look like like a dressier version of like a, a button-down shirt, but they feel like almost like not quite t-shirts, but they're super stretchy. They are super comfortable. They do not get wrinkled. You take them out of the laundry, you hang them up within 20 minutes, half an hour, the wrinkles are gone. They have pants, dress shirts, quarter zips, polos. And the other thing about these things is they have anti-odor technology. So they call it gold fusion, I guess. You're going to be smelling fresh and clean all day. And like I said, Rhone is 100% machine washable. So you can ditch the dry cleaners on your shirts. And they're just incredibly comfortable. And they, you saw me before I went to a funeral, and then I went out afterwards to, sort of like I rarely go to like a dressy situation, but that it worked great. They're great shirts, and they fit you like a dress shirt, but the mobility, the fit, the anti-wrinkle stuff, it's all sort of, I don't know. I feel like we've come to the future. The Commuter Collection can get you through any work day and straight into whatever comes next. Head to Rhone.com/Majority Report. Use the promo code Majority Report. Save 20% off your order. It's 20% off your entire order when you head to RHONE.com, Majority Report, all one word. Use code Majority Report, all one word, for that 20% off. It is time to find your corner office comfort. Also, this episode is part brought to you by Zippix Nicotine Toothpicks. Zippix brings you a totally satisfying, convenient, and great tasting way to curb your nicotine cravings. So it's time for you to put your cigarettes away, chuck them out, and get rid of your vape oils. Stop putting that stuff into your lungs. Not only does it smell for everybody around you, but it also is horrible for your health. Take it from me, someone who quit. It takes a long time to quit smoking. I used a number of different things. One of the things that still helps me to this day are toothpicks. And to move from smoking or vaping into nicotine toothpicks is a great way to get off of cigarettes. And it comes in two different options, 2 milligrams and 3 milligrams of nicotine. They have 6 different flavors. And then you move to what I use, which is their caffeine and B12 Zippix infused toothpicks. It's great for the B12 and the caffeine. I still have my oral, fixation issues from my days as a smoker. You've probably noticed over the years, I have toothpicks on the show. And they also, they come in these pouches, and then you can get one of these nice carriers. They also, I think, just come with these plastic carriers as well. And you keep them with you. Keep a set in your bag, keep a set at work. It's the way I do it. Zippix has already helped tens of thousands of customers in leading a healthier lifestyle. And if you currently smoke or vape, they can probably help you too. Make your lungs happy. Try Zippix nicotine toothpicks. Ditch the cigarettes. Ditch the vape. Go to zippixtoothpicks.com today. Get 10% off your first order by using the code MAJORITY at checkout. Your lungs, then everybody around you, your kids, your future kids, your parents, your friends, your partners, we're going to be glad that you did. And just a disclaimer, this product contains nicotine, which is an addictive chemical, and you must be 21 or older to order. Zip more, smoke less with Zippix nicotine toothpicks. And lastly, today's show brought to you by sunsetlakesebede.com. Use the code LEFTISBEST. You will get 20% off of what you order. I get to sleep because of Sunset Lake Sebede. I take the Sebede tincture and melatonin and the gummies. Sometimes I take the gummies with Sebede and some THC when I'm feeling a little bit crazy. They have smokables as well, leaf and keef for your either as a in and of itself or as part of your entourage effect for other products. They have Sebede fudge. They have Sebede coffee. They have lotions that are great and, best of all, in my mind, unscented for your skin. They have a salve that is great for your muscle aches, and I find it very helpful for my eczema. Saul and I have the exact same eczema patch on our back.
Oh my gosh.
Just a tiny thing right in the middle of our back.
All right. Well, this helps him too.
It helped him last night. And so check it out. They're a great company, movement partners. And by that, I mean they have donated thousands upon thousands of dollars to refugee resettlement, strike funds, criminal justice reform, food pantries, Innocence Project. Great group of folks, sunsetlakesebede.com. No use of pesticides, integrated pest management. They use regenerative farming practices. Just a great all-around company. Check them out. sunsetlakesebede.com. Left is best. Gets you 20% off. Okay, let's get into this. We've got Open Lines Friday for 25 minutes, and then we're going to have Astra Taylor on. Then we'll take more phone calls. Calling from, let's see what we got here. There was somebody on Twitter. Yeah, okay, here we go. And I don't see him there. All right. Let's go to calling from an 831 area code. 831 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam. My name's Nathan. I'm calling from Kansas City, Missouri.
Nathan from Kansas City, Missouri. What's on your mind?
Hey, I heard you guys talking about the pistol brace legislation that was attempted to be passed. And I don't know if you all have had this perspective before, but it's actually a lot more insidious than like trying to set people up for hunting with a pistol. It's actually trying to circumvent a few laws, and I was hoping to talk to you about that.
Sure. Yeah, I think, did you send an email about this? I think there was a couple of people sent emails, and we sort of followed up on it, but go ahead. It's a way of basically getting semi-automatics that have a smaller barrel. It's a small barrel if I understand, to sort of like function as an AR-15.
Yeah, that's a good way of thinking about it. If you've ever seen a pistol brace, they actually started as a form of equipment to help people with disabilities hold pistols. So sort of started right in a right thinking way. But what it turned into is that they realized that the brace is pretty close to a gun stock, and so you started seeing pistol braces turn into gun stocks. And what this allowed legally, it's still pistol. It allows you to buy basically a semi-automatic, put that on the back. It functions like a short-barreled rifle, but it effectively is a pistol. And part of this, by the way, from my perspective, I'm a responsible gun owner, definitely for better gun control, but the way they write this legislation is just nonsense. The definition of a pistol is literally designed to be held with one hand. So if I'm a gun designer, I can come out with a 20-pound gun, hold it with one hand, and say, this is how it's supposed to be used. And there's really nothing the government can do about it.
Right. I appreciate the call. I mean, it's going to get through the House. I don't think it's going to get anywhere else, but we shall see. Appreciate the call.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks. Let's go. Calling from a 617 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? Sorry?
Let's go. Calling from a 617 area code.
Oh, I thought that we were hearing him speak. 617? 617. 617. Hello?
Hello?
Hello? You're taking up the entire period that we've dedicated to taking calls by not answering your phone. And he just hung up. All right. There you go. Calling from a 732 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Oh my God.
732. Folks, come on. Let's do this.
Is this me?
Yes.
Is it me?
Yes.
Oh my goodness, thank you. Sorry. This is Rick. I'm calling from New Jersey, Jersey City.
Rick from New Jersey. What's on your mind?
Thank you.
What the hell is going on? Calling from a 774 area code. Is this like a joke?
I would hope not.
All right. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
This is Kaylee from Boston. How are y'all?
Kaylee from Boston. Doing well. What's on your mind?
So kind of something in short, mainly because I kind of saw a comment that I wanted to expand upon about Crowder you guys made.
Okay.
Nothing bad. But basically it's kind of like how like normal conservatives, especially when it comes to misinformation, like all of a sudden they were totally, maybe not totally fine. Because I think it was what one of the cameramen was alluding to, or the people behind the camera, is that a lot of people, when it comes to like LGBTQ things, might not even know what's happening if it weren't for the bans that are occurring. And now all of a sudden they get these things planted in their head of like, they might have had a bigotry or they might have had a leaning towards wanting a bigotry. But at least through this now, I think for people that are susceptible to it, it's only making it worse. Versus kind of like the neoconservative movement, which is mostly about like kind of like a Schrodinger's cat, kind of like trolling. They're two completely different things, obviously, but I think with these bans, it's only making it worse, and more people are getting involved because now they're knowing about it.
So yeah, I mean, I think it's being presented in a certain way that calls for a ban. I mean, when you have, both the actual like pressing of the legislation, yeah, you're going to see public sentiment change and get skewed based upon the information they're getting, and particularly when it's the first thing that they've heard of anything like this.
Yeah.
We saw a massive change in support for marriage equality after the Supreme Court found marriage equality, a constitutional right. I mean, so yeah, that's gonna happen without a doubt. But yeah, appreciate the call.
Yeah, of course. Enjoy your day.
Thanks. You too. Folks, make sure that we want to get callers on. We get a lot of people complaining in the IMs that they can't get through. Folks, we want to take callers who have not called in before. So far, everybody has been helpful in that regard. Calling from an 845 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello, Sam. This is Mike calling from Troy, New York.
Mike from Troy, New York. First-time caller?
It's been maybe 5 or 6 years since I've called. So
all right, that's fair. That's fair. What's on your mind?
I just wanted to talk a little bit about that Matt Walsh, Jordan Peterson interview.
Okay.
I don't know if I saw that one, actually. Did you guys cover it yesterday?
From a
You guys
few weeks
did it.
ago. No.
Okay.
I think, yeah. Peterson, he continued to use body dysmorphia and gender dysphoria interchangeably.
Oh,
right.
interesting.
Yes.
And they're completely different things.
Completely different.
Gender.
And I just want to say the body dysmorphia thing, he actively, him and his Daily Wire buddies actively foment it by crapping on anybody who's slightly bigger, especially women. But
yeah. Well, it's just with the dysmorphia, there's a recognition that there's a fundamental difference between the way someone perceives themselves and the reality. But with gender dysphoria, it's just a dissatisfaction with the, misalignment between your gender identity and, the way that you were born. And I just think it's kind of telling that he uses them
interchangeably.
Yeah.
I mean, your body is a physical thing that exists in space. The gender is a social construct. I mean, that's just the bottom line. It is a social construct. It is something that we as a society has made up and change over time, what it means to be manly or womanly. I made this point, I think, at that time, too. Walsh proves it every time he says some comment like hockey's not manly or is manly. He proves it when he feels like he needs to wear his lumberjack shirts all of a sudden as a way of establishing the fact that he's manly.
He also proves it every time he says that exceptions don't prove the rule. It's like, no, that you're recognizing an exception. How can that not disprove what you're talking about?
Yeah, what's the rules of gender? What are you talking about?
Right. It disproves the binary. That's what that student said to him when he was confronting him, and Matt Walsh had no answer for it. He just said essentially, like, if you're born without a limb, then that needs to be corrected. But like, it's a crude way to phrase it, but you're still acknowledging that it can be corrected then. And that's what makes his, like, I mean, he's just really dumb and bad at it. And the fact that he can't off the top of his head cite very basic statistics about gender affirming care in this country and conflates body dysmorphia with gender dysphoria, says but has a documentary out that he's supposedly the expert on. It tells you everything you need to know about the disingenuousness of that movement.
Yeah.
You're right.
And with Peterson, it's even more embarrassing because he's supposed to be the psychology guy. It's like
He's a lunatic. I'm sorry. I've watched enough Peterson to really think that he's really, I think there's something wrong up there.
And it's always been the case.
Appreciate the call.
Yep. Have a good one, guys.
You too.
Let's do this Peterson clip that we have since he raised it, and we'll get back to the calls in a second. I watched Peterson interview RFK. God help me. I just came upon it, and it was actually sort of quite funny, where Kennedy had to sort of pretend he didn't pretend he didn't follow. He just sort of like a lot of things that Peterson said, Kennedy sort of just was able to pivot away from not taking responsibility for. I mean, I found it a little bit disappointing because, I mean, it's sort of fascinating. It's unclear to me exactly what Kennedy is doing these interviews, not reaching Democrats, but also not espousing any perspectives necessarily that would change the minds of a Peterson viewer. It's sort of interesting in that respect. But be that as it may, I found this segment of the interview. Maybe we'll talk about the rest of this interview later. But I found this fascinating because here is Peterson claiming that he goes and talks to Democrats. Maybe he does. Totally. It's fascinating. Like, listen to him talk about the threat that exists from Antifa. And just remember that, let's just for a moment assume, and we know this is not the case. I mean, you can Google this, very easy to find. The number of deaths that have taken place from right-wing extremists over the past, let's say, 20 years versus so-called left-wing extremists. These are just facts. But also, think about what the equivalent of Antifa is. Maybe it's the Proud Boys. Maybe it's what those Oath Keepers. Maybe it's some other
white supremacists.
Specific organizations.
The fascist ones.
Yeah, the fasci ones. And think about their relationship, both of them, to power, to political power in this country. Keep that in the back of your mind. Like, how close was Donald Trump and all these advisors to the Oath Keepers and, the Proud Boys, just as an example, versus, I don't know, Biden and Antifa or Pelosi and Antifa. And then listen to what Jordan Peterson says here.
I think the data supports that quite clearly. But okay, so let me tell you two stories and tell me what you think about this. So when the Democrats I worked with in the U.S. in California, I had a conversation with them one day, very intelligent people, by the way, about Antifa. And they were on about QAnon and about right-wing radical groups. And they regarded them as entirely real and entirely credible threats. And that was partly as a consequence of the January 6th occurrences, let's say. And so I said, well, what do you guys think of Antifa? And they said, well, they don't really exist. And I thought, well, that's interesting because you think the right-wing conspirators exist, but you don't think the left-wing. But like I said, they were smart people.
Pause
so
it for
I
1 second.
investigated first.
I want everyone to take a moment, regardless of what your political ideology is, that are listening to this, and think about the names of the leaders of the Proud Boys or the Oath Keepers. Just think about it for a moment. Now, tell us the leaders of Antifa.
Yep.
Okay, continue.
And there were also, I would say, credible links between high members up in the Trump or the Trump White House during January 6th and some of the groups that he's conflating. I mean, it's well documented.
But yeah, go ahead.
Wing conspirators exist, but you don't think the left wing. But like I said, they were smart people, so I investigated further, and they said, well, it has no centralized organization. It's not a formal group. It's a very small minority of people, and it's extremely loosely structured, and it isn't representative of even the radical left, much less the centrist Democrats. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. So then I went and talked to Andy Ngo, who's a journalist who's covered Antifa in more detail than anyone else in the world, and who knows their organizational structure and their routines inside and out, and who's put his life on the line to cover this sort of this Antifa activity. And I asked him, how many Antifa cells do you think there are in the United States? And he said, well, there's probably about 20. And I said, well, how many full-time equivalent employees, so to speak, how many people do you think are in each cell that are dedicating themselves to the Antifa cause? And he said, well, maybe 40. And I said, oh, so that's 800 people. So that's 1 in 400,000. And, well, that's almost none. And so you could take that data and you could take the case, you could make the case the Democrats made, which is, well, the Antifa doesn't even exist. It's 1 in 400,000, In a city of 1 million, there'd be 2 Antifa members who were full-fledged, committed, full-time advocates.
Whatever that means.
But then you think, well, look at all the damage those people did. And then you think, well, maybe it only takes a trivial minority of people who are off the rails to cause a tremendous amount of damage. That's what happened when the Soviets took over the Russian society in the aftermath of the monarchies after World War I. It was a tiny percentage of people. And this is what made me worried on the Democrat side. So this is why when I went to Washington, I pushed the Democrats that I talked to. He said, well, when do you think the left goes too far? And so let me ask you that question, like fairly bluntly. You're trying to pull the Democrats to the center. You think it's a salvageable enterprise, and you think it's necessary to salvage it. It's a two-party system. It's half the country. When do you think the left goes too far? And how would you, in your administration, draw a line between those who are reasonable?
Now, I can't even remember how Kennedy answers this question. He doesn't address the huge setup there. That was a 2 or 3 minute clip that we just played, 4 minutes.
You can't even tell Kennedy's there.
And, well, no, he's in a different remote thing, and they have a weird way that they do this. But think about everything. Like, he's so close to understanding what the problem is. But imagine if that number wasn't 1 out of 400,000. Imagine if the people he was talking about were actually responsible for tens, if not hundreds, of people being killed. And imagine if that 1 out of 400,000, but it's actually a much larger number. I mean, we know this. The number of people in the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys and the One Percenters and the Michigan Militia and never mind, like sort of full-on white supremacist groups dwarfs those figures. Imagine if they not only existed in those numbers, which he says is terribly dangerous for society, like the Soviets did it that way.
Right, sure.
Imagine if they had direct relationship with the leader of the Republican Party.
Yep.
By every measure.
Roger Stone and Michael Flynn were in communication with these groups regularly as they tried to overthrow the government. The direct, overthrow the democratic results of the election, at least. I mean, that's the reality of it. And we also shouldn't take Andy Ngo's numbers on face value.
Well, that's the high end.
But exactly, and this guy, Andy Ngo, is a far right lunatic. So the numbers definitely don't take them at face value, but they're also much smaller when Peterson said that, I was like, oh, no, he's going to come up with some like absolutely insane figure. Still incredibly small. Even by that psycho's calculation, it's the other groups dwarf Antifa.
Can anyone who claims, like Peterson claims, to be some type of, scientist, I mean, he's, it's a soft science that he's doing, but how can anybody state a concern about that and not spend an hour and a half in his lead up to a question about what are you going to do about the radical right in this country?
Well, he's working with them, maybe. I mean, I don't really.
Yeah, exactly. He's a right-wing propagandist. The bigger problem is like this retconning of what the George Floyd moment meant, and that like all those protests was like radical Antifa. Those were normal Americans upset at police brutality. Newsweek, this is from June 3rd, 2020, 54% of Americans think burning down Minneapolis precinct was justified after George Floyd's death. Those were not all Antifa members. Those were regular American citizens.
And it's like, who's flying the 800 Antifa members all around the country in their private jet to get there?
The Soviet comparison, what's the Antifa equivalent to Soviet? Which, to remind folks, were literally like, the translation is councils, like workers' councils getting together. There's no such thing as Antifa's council.
It's so crazy.
But they used Antifa during the George Floyd protests as a substitute because they didn't want to say anti-racism activists. They wanted to make it sound scarier. And we also know that there were like informants for the FBI. We know this for a fact. And other provocateurs making violence happen in some of those rallies. And it was still so minuscule compared to everything that we've seen, both from a statistical perspective on right-wing terrorism in this country and from what we just saw on the isolated incident of January 6th, which Peterson's trying to compare it to there.
Right, that's a good point. I mentioned that Newsweek poll about the police precinct, but largely speaking, those for like the amount of people that participated in protest were extremely peaceful.
And honestly, I mean, we didn't even play what RFK said there, Sam, but I didn't even mean to mention Roger Stone and Michael Flynn in this context because he's being photographed with them right now. He's being misled. I mean, I don't even want to remove this guy, his agency. I don't know him, but like whoever's around him is doing something pretty insidious, and it smells like a rat F campaign or something that's like meant to, I don't know. It's not good vibes.
It's not good vibes.
No.
Calling from a 412 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Eric from Pittsburgh.
Eric from Pittsburgh.
First-time caller.
First time
big fan.
caller. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Eric from Pittsburgh, what's on your mind?
Hey, first off, I got distracted by Peterson's drip there with that leather daddy outfit, looking like he's about to roll up to a Neutral Milk Hotel reunion show.
I know. I thought about those shoulder pads. Is that so he can put one rifle on each shoulder?
He was going on
If anyone tries to attack him, he has a copy of The Sun Also Rises tucked in his breast pocket. At any rate, so this is a little far afield from what you guys usually talk about, but I'm kind of only seeing it in right-wing circles, with reactionaries doing what they do. About, I guess it was probably at the start of June, the Criterion channel, of course, if you're a film snob, Criterion, every month they have a new curation of films. And this month included The French Connection.
Oh, yes. I've read about this. They've cut out a line.
Yeah.
They cut out a line. An exchange between Schreider and Hackman.
Yeah, where Hackman uses the N-word, rather casually.
Yep.
And, of course, everyone started giving heat to Criterion, who, as far as I know, hasn't said anything. And then it came out that same cut of the film was, I think, on, like, Apple TV or something. So I think it turns out that the movie is held by Fox, which, of course, means it's now held by Disney, which means that's probably what they just did, like an unauthorized edit or whatever, or authorized by the director or whatever. But I was curious if there's any, just in general, what your thoughts are on that kind of thing. Is there a line in which, like, that's the smart thing to do? obviously, I never really cared for that line in the movie. I guess the idea is probably supposed to be like, oh, Gene Hackman's like a down-to-earth, streetwise cop. I think he probably could have gotten there some other way. Yeah. It's supposed to be like, oh, this makes it so realistic, and then you show the like craziest car chase that's ever been filmed up to that point. So whatever.
I mean, personally, I don't feel that strongly about them taking it out of the movie. I mean,
I don't in that instance, but it feels like one of those unfortunate, like slippery slope things, right?
I also don't. Every slope is slippery. I mean, they cut out images of the Twin Towers after, in some films after they were released because they came out, after they had dropped down and people didn't complain about this. I mean, I personally, I don't think that I wouldn't have cut it out of the film. Particularly in the sense that, like, I think it's helpful to see to gain some insight into the perspective of cops in that situation. Like, I don't think it's done gratuitously. I don't, that is if the utterance of the word is the N-word is too problematic, maybe you drop it out a little bit, although I guess that would take people out of the movie, and this is done seamlessly. I mean, I think seeing that the way that cops viewed black people at that time, I would imagine it's not necessarily changed in some circles. Yeah, no. But in that respect, I think it's sort of, but that's my perspective on it. But I also don't think that, like, I'm not worried, frankly, about that. I mean, that's the only thing I can tell you is that, like, I wouldn't do it. I personally think it's a missed opportunity to sort of like have art tell a truth about society, even if it's a truth that we don't like. But it'll
have to go a lot farther before we start, taking to the trenches on the other side of it.
I wish they just put
and what's weird about it to me is, I'm sorry. And what's weird about it to me is Disney has actually been fairly decent on that issue.
Well,
where
I don't know.
like
Now we're getting into like fanzine or whatever it is, indie
not
movie news. Like I don't know. I just think that, like, as a broad question, should movies, should we go back to pieces of movies or literature or stuff like that have representations that we don't like, embedded in them, attributed to fictional characters? I think no. I mean, do I think that we can revisit certain things that were put out to be, a certain type of propaganda? Yes. But in terms of this, like, this is what I used to do, and I would critique, look, I wrote a tweet that was offensive if you take it in a way, if you don't know what sarcasm is, if you don't know what irony is or satire. And I think that is a tool that artists use to reveal certain truths. And I broadly don't like the idea of that. But of course, this is a commercial film. Different people own the copyright now. They can do with it what they want. I think there's going to be far worse things, frankly, that people do with that stuff in the future, like bring this guy back to do an ad, or something like that. So I appreciate the call. Yeah. Thanks. All right. Do we have Astra?
Oh, yeah, I'm talking to her.
We do have her? Okay.
No, we don't have her.
Oh, okay. All right. Keep me updated on that. Let's see. Let's go. Next caller calling from a 704 area code. Are you a first-time caller? If so, what's your name and where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam, how y'all doing? My name is Gabe. I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina.
Dave from Charlottesville, North Carolina. What's on your mind? Gabe?
So I've been in Gabe, sorry. So I've been in North Carolina for about almost 20 years now. I moved down here from New York City when I was a kid. My parents, I guess they just wanted me to be raised down here, it was better. And ever since then, the city has grown so much from people migrating from up north. and it has become more liberal. And I wonder if it worries me if that's the reason why we had that Congresswoman that ran as a Democrat and then changed her party to Republican, and now the Republican House has a supermajority.
Yeah.
Now, that worries me if that's going to keep happening, because Charlotte is getting more liberal, and it's starting to expand around the area. So we have Concord, Kannapolis, Gastonia, Belmont. Those were normally Trump towns, like 100% Trump towns. I used to go down there and see flags all the time for Trump. And now I don't see as much because they're starting to migrate.
I think you're speaking to an anxiety that made her flip probably very advantageous for certain like Republican actors in the state legislature. And I would also imagine that their anxiety about it's intensified because there's a Democratic governor. So they're trying to fortify, to your point.
Right. Yeah, because Governor Cooper, my personal opinion, he's done a great job here in North Carolina. I wouldn't mind seeing him go for the ticket one day in the future, not now, obviously. But yeah, that was just my question. If it's possible that this may happen, but not just in North Carolina, but maybe other states too.
It's interesting. I know a lot of college friends who moved to North Carolina for the economy, different sorts of industries and like tech and consulting type of stuff, getting stationed down there increasingly.
Nashville's another.
It's not surprising to me that would have an impact on the politics.
Yep. Appreciate the call.
Oh, yeah. Asheville. Yeah, no problem. Thanks, guys. Love you guys.
Yeah, thanks.
I don't think you can get away with what she did on a regular basis, to be honest with you. I mean, at one point
it's a bit desperate, yeah.
But I think in the short run that was effective. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk to Astra Taylor. She's the co-founder of the Debt Collective on what folks are doing in anticipation of the Supreme Court saying that the Biden administration does not have the authority to forgive any student loans. We'll be right back after this. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigland on the Majority Report. Joining us now, Astra Taylor, co-founder of the Debt Collective. Astra, it's been, I think it's been a while. Maybe it may have been a year since we've talked to you. And we are all basically waiting right now for the Supreme Court to make a decision on the Biden administration's authority under the HEROES Act, and that's important to say, as to whether they can forgive any student debt. And I guess one of the other things we're waiting to hear about is the standing of the plaintiffs. But let's put that aside for a moment. What's your sense, I mean, if you haven't, as to what the Supreme Court's going to do?
I mean, I have no faith in the Supreme Court. I think the Supreme Court is a corrupt and illegitimate institution at this point. I mean, they've occasionally surprised us, and there are issues with the case related to the standing question. So I think that's really key. I just want to say I so appreciate how you frame this question. The case before the Supreme Court is not about student debt relief writ large. It's about the specific procedure the Biden administration used to propose its debt relief plan. And you mentioned the HEROES Act. So this is really about one method of canceling debt. There are others on the table, and that's really important.
Okay, well, let's go through. I mean, let's just briefly walk through this. When we say they're doing it under the auspices of the HEROES Act, they are doing, the HEROES Act was passed in the wake of 9/11. It allowed essentially different government agencies to provide relief, regulatory, almost like administrative, I should say, relief, in the wake of the 9/11 attacks. And it can be applied in any type of situation. It was invoked by Trump in 2020 to use to create a moratorium on payments of debt, which is, it's debt relief in some form or another. I mean, interest rates slow or basically stop, are frozen. Interest accrual is frozen. You have a chance to go out and theoretically work more. So, I mean, and the government supposedly lost some money in this instance. So, and that existed it will exist up until September. And and will end in this instance because of the debt ceiling deal, but it would have ended anyways. Do you think, what is your assessment without knowing how the Supreme Court rules on this? Because they may not even invoke the question of it being under the auspices of the HEROES Act as to whether there's any opportunity. But were there other alternatives in which the Biden administration could have used? And what's your sense as to whether one was better than the other?
Yeah, so there are multiple mechanisms to cancel student debt. I think one thing we also need to really make clear is canceling student debt is not radical at all. It happens all the time, actually, through disability discharges or income-driven repayment plans or public service loan forgiveness. Now, those programs are broken and they often, are difficult for people to access. But debt cancellation happens. It happens frequently through the Higher Education Act, which is the, sort of foundational Higher Education Act, just like it sounds, that gives a broad authority to compromise and settle student debt. So that authority has been used to grant billions of dollars under the Biden administration for hundreds of thousands of borrowers. So debt cancellation is routine. So the Debt Collective likes to say that the government has a Swiss Army knife of tools. There are multiple tools that can be used to cancel student debt, and they are all legal. I think that's really important to say as well. The HEROES Act wasn't flawed. It was a perfectly appropriate legal authority to use. We were in an emergency. I would say we are still in an emergency. The COVID pandemic certainly was something that caused a massive expansion, a kind of emergency expansion of the welfare state. Debt relief was given to corporations and to people, wealthy people, through PPP loans. So the legality of debt cancellation has never been in question. In fact, one of the authors of the HEROES Act wrote and said, this is being used exactly as it was intended. The case is really baseless. It's a bad faith case brought about by Republicans, and there's a joint case being heard with it that is literally being bankrolled by dark money billionaires, the guy behind Home Depot, Bernie Marcus. So the problem was not that they used the wrong legal authority or a weaker legal authority. I want to make 2 points. One is they used the HEROES authority from what we can tell, and this is, I do not have a direct line to the Oval Office, but I think we can assume this pretty with some certainty. What the administration liked about the HEROES authority is that it was tied to the pandemic. So they could give the veil of saying, well, this is an exceptional case. We will give you some student debt relief. If they'd used, for example, the Higher Education Act, well, that's this broad-based authority. So what's stopping them from doing it again or canceling all student debt, right? It opens a can of worms in their minds that maybe they didn't want to go for. They wanted to really tie it to the pandemic.
Yeah, that reminds me a little of how the House essentially said, we're going to do the much more convoluted and Byzantine COBRA expansion as opposed to temporarily expanding Medicaid or Medicare.
It's sort of neoliberal brain there. But the problem was, and I just throw this out really quickly, is the problem wasn't the legal authority, it's that they moved too slow and they means tested. So they put an income cap, which for complex reasons necessitated that they put an application on the relief, but then they didn't have the application ready to go. They waited 51 days to put the application online and then slowly started to approve people, ultimately approving 16 million applications. Well, those were days that the Republicans were like, wow, this is amazing. Let's throw everything we can at the wall. And so there were tons of lawsuits. There weren't just these two, there were tons of lawsuits that were thrown out of court. But ultimately, these two cases that are being heard together at the Supreme Court were lined up with sympathetic right-wing judges, and they got fast-tracked up the chain.
All right, let me, and just one other thing I should say, I think the Biden administration would say, and I'm not in a position to assess this, and I think we need to hear what the Supreme Court rules, but the Biden administration would also say, Trump had just used the HEROES Act. We had been using the HEROES Act for 3 years with this authority. The difference between pause and forgive debt is just a matter of degree. It's not a question of a legal authority or not. You either have that authority or you don't. And I think they also thought it would be more of a slam dunk. But I also, I totally agree with Emma's sort of analogy. They wanted to make this a sort of a one-time thing and not have it brought up again. But this notion of like the I think that 50 days that you talk about, the amazing thing is that I think the administration was so afraid of doing this, and they had no idea of its political value to 45 million Americans. And so that's the difference, is like they underestimated how popular it would be. And what you're saying, I think, is once the Republicans saw how popular it was going to be, they set out to stop it at all costs.
100%. And it's popular with a portion of the Republican base. I don't know if you all remember, but I think you're exactly right. They were caught off guard, even though advocates had been telling them forever that it was popular, and there was ample polling saying, wow, this is really popular with, mythic independents and even Republicans, and, across the board with younger people, but older people like it as well. There were these sort of long clips on CNN, 10-minute long clips where they're like, we're at the farmer's market in rural Pennsylvania looking for some salt of the earth people who hate student debt relief. And, everyone they found was like, oh, I think it's a pretty good idea. Actually, the cost of college is outrageous. And, I think helping people is good, actually. So 100% that they underestimated it. They dragged their feet. And I loved Emma's use of the word Byzantine. I mean, it wasn't the most Byzantine application that they put online, but, why not just mire something up in bureaucracy, right? And that was the thing. We said very clearly, for the years of our organizing, do this automatically, do this immediately, do not impose applications. There's so much social science research that shows the minute you means test, welfare benefits, or you impose applications that actually they filter out the people who actually need the relief the most or are the most vulnerable, right? So it was a very illogical thing in the sense that it was there to ostensibly filter out 3% of student borrowers, those mythic rich student debtors who make over $125,000 a year, and but what you actually do is you lose the poorest by having that application in place. So it was a real, it was really cutting off their own nose to spite the face. What is the phrase?
Well, it's also from a cost perspective. From a cost perspective, at best, it's a wash. It could have even been a loss to impose the means test to filter out such a small portion of people who would supersede it. The savings that you're going to get for not, providing $10,000 worth of relief, because almost definitely, not quite. I mean, it's conceivable you could have gotten a Pell Grant and be within that 3% as well. $20,000 for a very small number of people. You're costing yourself that in the administration of it. I want to just note two other things in this conversation. Then I want to talk about like what's happening in terms of strategy, assuming the Supreme Court. There were two Congress contemplated in the American Rescue Act the idea that debt relief would not be considered taxable benefit, which is an indication, it seems to me, that Congress specifically was okay with the exercise and assumed the authority existed. Otherwise, why would you include that provision? It would be silly. And we also know that Congress tried to stop debt relief and under Republican controlled House, and it didn't happen. So we have a sense, I think it's important to say this, just if Supreme Court says that the administration doesn't have this authority, that Congress needs to legislate it, the Congress thought that the administration had this authority.
Really well said. I mean, so one of the there's many things that are really wrong with this case. So one is the way it was fast tracked up the chain. So there was never any discovery or fact finding. So when we think about lawsuits and court cases, right, we imagine people debating the evidence, or even bringing the evidence out. None of that happened in this case. The claims that were made by the plaintiffs, which are BS, were never checked before getting to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court doesn't do that sort of stuff. So that's really that's one thing that is clear. The other thing is it has to do. They're invoking something called the major questions doctrine, which is like basically, can the president do things, or should it that involve major questions? And it's sort of one of these. It's a made up doctrine. A doctrine sort of dignifies it. But I think your point is spot on, which is, so Congress passed the Higher Education Act. Congress passed the HEROES Act. Congress, as you exactly said, it didn't just contemplate putting this provision to ensure that debt relief isn't taxable. It's in there, right? We are in a window. I think it's 5 years. Somebody should fact check me on that.
I think it's 2025 is my understanding. End of 2025. Yep.
Yeah, so from 2020, 5 years, where you get federal debt relief and it's not taxed as income. And so, this is the thing. Congress has weighed this, and you're exactly right. They did. There was a kind of showy attempt by Republicans to pass a bill, and it did pass in both houses with some Democrat support, trying to claw back relief and block this program and actually impose, like to try to, in theory, claw back some of the relief people have already been given. So Congress has been pretty clear on this, right? That they think that relief is a legitimate thing. And that's why this court case is, baseless and in bad faith and bogus. And why I think, many other people agree with me that the executive branch is fully within its rights to use one of the other legal authorities it possesses should the justices strike down this iteration of debt relief.
Your organization, Debt Collective, I know, is working with, you don't have access to the White House, but you do have access, I imagine, to some offices in Capitol Hill. Ayanna Pressley was asked a couple of weeks ago up in Boston about whether she and Elizabeth Warren sent a memo to Biden back, I think it was in 2021 or 2020, calling on him to use the Education Act from 65 as the basis of debt relief. And she was asked to confirm that. She basically said she didn't necessarily confirm that she wrote a memo. She was public about it, it seems to me at the time. But she did say, she did provide an answer that suggested that everybody was gearing up to push the Education Act as the basis. Now, based upon what the Supreme Court says, that may be DOA anyways. But what's happening on that front, and what is the perspective that people are taking regarding the Education Act?
The authority granted under the Higher Education Act is very broad. Again, this is the broad authority, sometimes called compromise and settlement. And it is also routinely used, as I said. So, this isn't a secret thing. Chuck Schumer and Elizabeth Warren were very loud about pushing the president to do an executive order and cancel student debt using the HEA, the Higher Education Act, back in 2000. And this is something that the Debt Collective has been pushing for as well. And I do want.
And they were calling for $50,000, if I remember correctly.
Yes, right. Which I think was a strategic mistake. They should have been calling to cancel it all, because that's the moral and the economically sound thing to do. But absolutely. So, this has already been on the table. And I think it's important to say that actually the Supreme Court recently said using the HEA to cancel debt was fine, because there was a case where for-profit debtors who had been organizing originally with the Debt Collective. This was a fight that we started back during the Obama administration. The Obama administration did something similar to what the Biden administration did. Instead of granting broad-scale relief, they put an application up, made people apply one by one. There was a trickle of relief, then 4 years with Betsy DeVos at the Department of Education. So finally, the Biden administration has been canceling large amounts of debt using this authority. And then it was challenged in courts, and it was challenged in court, and the Supreme Court actually ruled and let it stand using this authority, the Higher Education Act. So, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what they're going to say about that authority in the case that we're waiting on. Maybe they'll do something drastic. My sense is we should prepare for the worst,
right?
In terms of at least the. As you pointed out, they could either say they could dismiss the case because they say it doesn't have standing, or they could say, you can't do this relief plan because of the HEROES Act. The HEROES Act authority, wasn't implemented properly, or isn't this broad. But the point is there are other tools on the table, and if a bit of creative thinking could go a long way on this. Again, student debt is canceled. Or people are put on forbearance through multiple means. And this is something people are really counting on. Again, 16 million people got messages from the Department of Education saying your application has been approved. So if this gets scuttled by the courts, there will be lawsuits from those folks moving forward, right? Because they got something official.
And they've been, and for months they've been, anticipating that they're going to have, at least a portion of their student debt relieved, and so maybe they went and made purchases based upon this. I mean, they got a letter from the government. Is it your sense that the administration understands the political salience of this? In other words, did it? Let's just assume. I don't credit Joe Biden with some sense of morality. I also don't think that a lot of the economists necessarily around him buy into the notion that somehow this would be inflationary or something to that effect. Let's just put it that way, because look, we just saw trillions of dollars go into the economy and the inflation was anemic and it's already cooling, and much to, I think, the chagrin of like Larry Summers and others who happen to also be against debt relief. But in the most cynical way, do you think the Biden administration understands the political importance of this? Like in those 50 days that they had, were they genuinely like, whoa, maybe we should have done this beforehand? Like, did they get it?
I mean, it surprised me the degree to which they leaned into it after the announcement when they saw the popularity of it, right? So it felt to me that there was an element of surprise, like, wow, this is really popular. This is popular across the board. You saw a lot of very, kind of bold messaging coming from the White House. It was almost as though they literally sort of copied the Debt Collective's Twitter feed and were calling out the opposition for their hypocrisy around PPP loans. But we know that this administration has a history of betraying its base, especially younger people, right? I mean, younger people, there was all of the talk after 2022. Younger voters stemmed the red wave, right, which was anticipated. Why did young people turn out? Climate change, gun violence, student debt relief. So my feeling is that people in the administration think they can kind of have their cake and eat it too, and say, oh, well, we tried to do debt relief and we were blocked by the courts. And it is our job as organizers to make them feel, make them recognize that actually doesn't cut it, that they have to follow through. They have the means to do it. And they can't afford to demoralize 40 million people and their families, right? I mean, it's like, this is something that people are really counting on. One thing I will say is, there are some people who, in the response I often get, where people are like, you see, they lied. They never wanted to do this. I don't think it's that simple. I think there are some, the administration is made up of different people. Some folks are really committed to this. I think there were lots of skeptics in the administration as well. But to me, I'm like, of course, Joe Biden didn't want to do this. Look at his history. Look at his track record. He was one of the architects of the student lending program. We've had to fight him every step of the way, just like we had to fight the Obama administration and fight the Trump administration. And we just need to keep fighting and pushing for this. We've made tremendous progress. Obviously, the Supreme Court is, a serious adversary, but debtors cannot give up. And, we will keep organizing. There are all sorts of options, policy options on the table. And ultimately, we're fighting for a world where education is a right and is free for everybody who wants to do it. And you don't need a college degree to get a decent, dignified, well-paying job. That's the horizon we're working towards. Debt Collective is just one step on the way towards that.
What can
debt relief?
what can folks do? I mean, in the wake of, I mean, I agree with you. Like the idea, yeah. I think it's their strategy often to sort of blame the court. I mean, the problem with that strategy, it seems to me, is that they're not doing anything. They're not sounding the alarm about the court in a way that sort of like it measure is.
They don't have the muscles to do that.
Well, it's they like if you're gonna blame the court for doing these horrendous things, you should be out there talking about court reform, and you're not doing that. And so it's sort of like, I mean, that's the problem they have with even making that case politically. And Democrats have been very poor about, sort of making the case about courts for for forever. So, I mean, I don't think that's going to cut it.
Jeannie Thomas, the Washington Post revealed that she, through her nonprofit, actually hosted an event by one of the principals of the Job Creators Network, which is this Bernie Marcus funded, right-wing front group that is behind the lawsuit that's out of Texas trying to block student debt relief. I mean, there's so much corruption on the table that's just being left there that they could be leaning into.
They could do a hearing on that. They did one day, Dick Durbin, one day of Clarence Thomas hearings. Okay, wash my hands of that and we're out. But I mean, that kind of corruption's quotidian with these guys.
What can folks do in the event that the Supreme Court, even in the event that the Supreme Court dismisses the case or finds that there was authority under the HEROES Act? I mean, what? Well, let me ask it that way. If they leave the program untouched and allow for this to go through, what's the next step? Let's take the positive step, and then we'll take maybe the negative scenario.
Well, I actually think the step is the same, which is that people need to get organized around their economic and democratic interests, right? And so we always knew that this relief proposal of $10,000 to $20,000 of relief, again, through an application so that not everybody who's eligible is going to get it, is inadequate. It's yet another stepping stone. So, even if the Supreme Court grants us this gift from on high of letting this program live, people need to get organized and ensure relief actually gets to people swiftly, and that we keep fighting for more, that we build on this to get to the sort of root of the problem, which is the way higher education is financed, which is, financed through student loans instead of directly funded through public money. And I think that's a really important fight right now, as we're seeing these attacks on public education at every level, and so that is really critical. And if it goes poorly, debtors need to get organized. The Debt Collective is organizing a strike. There will be calls. There are calls actually every Thursday for the next couple of weeks that are student debtor strategy sessions. We will have another legal strategy unveiled soon that people can participate in, that I'm quite optimistic about. We will have to keep organizing, and that's just the reality of it. And a lot of people will say this is proof we need to vote harder. Voting's easy. Voting takes a few minutes. Sometimes it does take hours if you're in a state where they're trying to, disenfranchise you. But it's really that our energy needs to be building power at the base so that we can keep pushing these issues forward, because not that long ago, this was a laughable concept, the idea that the government would be granting debt relief. So we have to keep building. That's just the fact. We have to do the work.
We will put a link to the Debt Collective in our podcast and YouTube descriptions. You have all sorts of resources there for folks they can check out and see how they can get involved in organizing and pushing this. Astra Taylor, thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
All right, folks, we are going to take a break and head into the fun half of the program. And we're going to continue to take your phone calls. 646-257-3920, 646-257-3920. Just a reminder, it is your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member by going to jointhemajority.com. When you do, you not only help this show survive and thrive, you also get the free half free of commercials. And then you get the fun half, and you can IM the show through the app at majorityapp.com if you're a member. If you're not, and if you're a member, you also get to search the entire archives, and we're still in the process of tagging that. We have over 3,000 shows. So if you want to see, if you could follow the evolution of
we're at 3,100 shows.
3,100 shows?
Wow.
Jesus. You could follow the evolution of the idea of debt forgiveness over the course of the past decade plus now through the Majority Report. Also, don't forget Against the Web, a cosmopolitan answer to the new right, written by Michael Brooks, published in late April of 2020. It's now on audio form. Go check that out at audible.com. I did the narration. And justcoffee.coop. Fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority. Get 10% off. Emma, what's happening on ESVN? And let me just remind you, callers, 646-257-3920. We want first-time callers. First-time callers. Maybe if you were on like 6 years ago, that's fine too.
All right. Well, on ESVN, we spoke about the Stanley Cup, NBA championships, as well as the PGA Live fiasco explained. And then we did a bit of a dive into the running back market and how something's got to give on that front when it comes to labor in the NFL. YouTube.com/ESPN show.
Matt!
Yesterday, Left Reckoning on the Griscom stream, David talked to union organizer Amina Sheikh and Professor Emeritus Charles Omowale Simmons about labor delegation they took to Cuba, the result of U.S. sanctions and building solidarity with our neighbors to the south. So check that out yesterday.
And Woke Joker on the IM says, "Shofar me. I joined just a few days ago." Here you go. And that will lead us into the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just wanna degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it to my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ Danner.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. You see white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males,
psych, fuck them.
Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on, fuck them. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy.
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland, fun half. Friday. Yeah. Calling from a 306 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? Is this your first time calling?
Hi, it's me.
Yeah.
And yes, it is my first time calling.
Okay. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, I'd actually like to remain anonymous for this one.
Okay.
I'd like to talk about political consulting, if that's okay.
Okay.
So I'm just going to tell a little bit of a story. So I got out of academia a couple years ago and really wanted to make an impact on basically the political world. And so I got hired on to do political consulting, building like prediction models, forecasting type things, basically to determine which sort of electoral districts end up getting funding when you actually go and run and you're trying to win different states. And so I spent months building out these models. And as the election actually started to show up, the numbers weren't looking particularly great. And eventually I ended up with my contact basically calling in and being like, we need you to change the numbers. We need you to adjust a whole bunch of different electoral districts. And they wouldn't provide any reasoning. They said that there was basically on-the-ground information. And essentially, they really heavily prompted the model to get changed to a way that basically favored sort of old guard people running. I don't necessarily know if it was ideological or if it was more just like these people have been in the party for a long time. But it was an extremely frustrating experience. They absolutely refused to listen to any sort of like evidence or data. And ultimately, the funding decisions that ended up getting made probably cost several seats at the state level. And it wouldn't have changed the outcome of the overall election, but it was a very disheartening experience, because I thought the one thing that might sort of be like protected from basically ideological and institutional pressure would be just like the raw numbers. It's just sort of math, but it turns out even that is heavily pressured.
Are you talking about a situation in the States?
Yes.
Can you say it was a Democratic campaign, right? So
yes.
Okay.
I can't go. I really do not want to get into.
Okay, you can't go any further. Well, listen. I mean, I have to say that I don't find it terribly surprising. We've talked about the iron law of institutions, right? Which is that people within an institution would rather maintain their own power than have the institution lose power. They'd rather maintain their own. You know what I'm saying? So we see this in the context of like people who are, in the Democratic, minority or majority, depending on which house we're talking about, in types of Congress. Like the desire to maintain power is greater than increasing the power of the institution. And, I think like people can understand this from the perspective if they've ever worked in any type of large enterprise, like a corporation. My experience, just working at the one corporation I worked for an extended period of time at Air America, was these ding-dongs would much rather put money in their friend's pocket than actually succeed in their endeavor. Or they're incapable of seeing that, regardless of what the evidence is, that them helping their friends wouldn't be helpful, or they didn't care. I mean, so I'm not shocked by it, to be honest with you. It would have been great if there was a way for you to leak that stuff out, though.
As much as I understand.
And I understand why you can't do that. But it also, it's like, you understand the institutional pressures, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the reason why you don't want to leak that stuff out there is because you're done in that business if you do.
100%. And again, it's my entire career.
Right, right. And I bet that those people who are pushing you to change those numbers had a similar perspective.
I'm sure that probably is something that factors into it.
Yeah, I mean it's a problem. I mean it's a problem. Yeah. It's a real problem, both from a leadership perspective, like within the Democratic Party. It's also a problem from like a consultant perspective, which I imagine Well, let me ask you this: those people who told you to change the numbers, were they politicians or were they consultants?
No, they were not politicians.
They were consultants.
Essentially, yes.
Okay.
One thing I do want to also put in a little bit of perspective, because I have worked on international elections as well. The amount of money that flies around in the American ecosystem is completely ridiculous compared to anything else. Most other systems have significantly harsher restrictions on how funds get used. And so, again, it's a completely, like, the American political system's completely different than pretty much anywhere else that I've worked on.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
So,
it's ridiculous that, I mean, I don't know. It's ridiculous that we can support our show because of politics. I mean, we don't take any money from parties or anything, this and that, but the nature of our politics is such. But the consultant class within the Democratic Party is just, we have
a scourge.
We have so many examples of it being like just a racket. I mean, and that is a big problem. It's a big problem.
And I will say that, again, if you you can push back, and but they'll just ignore you. That's probably the most frustrating part. Anyway, that's everything I want to say. Thank you very much for taking the call.
Yeah, the Democratic consulting class, they're the ones that came up with Ultra MAGA. So
it's not just that they're not good, but that is a prime example of it. It's that there is a network of these people, and it is like there's this sort of like they maintain a certain like I won't say anything if you don't say anything type of situation.
It's not clear to me that a third world just bribery system is that much behind our system in terms of getting actual things done.
I think this is part of the reason, like when people talk about the power of the DNC, the DNC does not have the power that people attribute to it in terms of strictly impacting how people vote or the elections.
Particularly in the post-Obama era.
The real problem with the DNC, is that they are in the functional equivalent of an old boys network. It's not it doesn't happen to be necessarily old boys, but in terms of like the consultant class and their relationships with party apparatchiks is the biggest problem with the DNC, in my estimation. I'm talking about just like the administration. They and we see it in how it's used too by people who were representing, challengers. These outfits were banned by the DNC, or blacklisted, I should say. I mean, that is where the real problem is, it seems to me. But let's go to the phones. Calling. Let's see here. Calling from a 949 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? It's your first time calling in.
Mike from Anaheim. It's my second time calling in.
All right. When was the last time?
A couple months ago, I think. I just got in. I want to talk about Israel.
Okay, fine.
All right. So what? Like, okay. I have a specific subject that it's not really, I've never really heard it talked about, but I'd like to hear your guys' take on it. So, like, what's the real, like, I'm against, obviously, Israel taking people's homes and, like, killing them. Like, it's just, I mean, abject. But the thing is, though, is that, so they believe in the same God. Like, the fight is over Jerusalem, isn't it? Really?
Well, no.
I think you're being I'm not trying to be critical, but I just think it's a little bit reductive to bring it back to the same God. We're talking about more than just like what is people's religious belief, but it's an exercise of power and settler colonialism on the side of Israel, which I think is a more helpful way to view the apartheid there, as opposed to like, I mean, it's just a little.
All being Abrahamic is not relative.
It's a little
relevant.
Bill Maher in 2006.
Okay, but hold on though, because what I'm saying is that the whole thing is that it seems to be top down. like that. I'm not trying to necessarily reduce it to like believing in the same God, but the thing is that like it seems that most people's problem or whatever is that like Judaism has essentially written themselves as the chosen people because they were supposedly the first people where the one true God revealed himself to them. And if Islam believes in that same God, then like
you know there are Christian
wait.
Do you know there are Christian Palestinians?
Christian Palestinian. Yeah, okay, I mean, this isn't. But what's the majority?
But wait,
Muslim,
but this isn't. I mean, I think there, may have been a time where the question of Jerusalem was one of the was considered a like a primary question, but that we're so far past that. We're so far past that. It's not. I mean, it's one of the last questions that you would resolve anyways. It's not just a question of Jerusalem. I mean, it's a question of autonomy and the existence of the Palestinian people. And so the issue is far broader than that. I also wouldn't say that it's like top down necessarily in the context of Israel. You have an increasingly larger concentration within parliament, but also within the country of religious zealotry, and then matched with an increasing number of like uber nationalists, and so I just don't. I mean, in some ways, what Emma's saying is right. Like we're talking like, this is 1995 that you're talking about. But I
mean, okay. So the reason why I'm bringing it up like this is because like there needs to be a way to synthesize the dispute, or because right as it stands right now, like people don't even know what the fucking subject is. Like,
here's the bottom line.
It's not a dispute.
Here's the point. I mean, we don't necessarily, and I appreciate the call, but we don't necessarily have to know the nuances of this. It's just a question of like, how much do we want to be spending our money there? Essentially, like how much do we want to be supporting the Israeli government, which is infringing more and more on the rights of Palestinians? I mean, how many Israelis need to come out about, and call what's going on apartheid in Israel? Before we say like we shouldn't be supporting that type of regime.
We're a politics show. We're not talking and making broad characterizations about religion and hierarchies within what religion and what that means for people, because that's, to be honest, I think that's a really bad way to view power in the world.
You're going in the wrong direction.
And it leads you down roads of bigotry when we're talking about relationships between a state that has immense resources, the backing of the most powerful empire on the planet, and others, and another state that has been systemically disenfranchised, its rights taken away, colonized. And that's how you have to view that dynamic, not as one religion versus the other, because again, there are Muslims within Israel as well. There are Christians within Palestine. I mean, like this is a much more complex tapestry than is being displayed, except for the non-complex part, which is the one that there's a settler colonial state with a lot of power and resources, and there's a people that is being subjugated. That's it. It has nothing to do with ideology.
I mean, there was a time where people would talk about making Jerusalem an international city because it is, sort of a religious center for at least Judaism and Islam, and Christianity not far not far from there.
Yeah.
But that is that's just not the central question by far anymore. It's not even like close to the
imperialism and nationalism.
Yes.
It's not religion.
And it's not like your question isn't like a bad question. I'm just trying to more like
It's commonly
aggressively steer you away from that trap because
Yeah.
there's a lot of people that fall into it, including like the person I just mentioned. That was, you know, when I realized my politics were different than like religion after watching Religious. I was
Yeah.
like, this is actually kind of mean.
It's a common sort of wrong alley to go down to the point where literally Karl Marx had to write an essay on the Jewish question, arguing against certain types of socialists at that time, saying Jewish people need to sort out their own religious stuff and how insular they are before we give them full rights.
Yeah, right.
Let's go to the phones calling. Let's see what we got here. I don't know. Somebody picking up a 315 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Jake. I'm calling from Rhode Island.
And Jake, how many times
Yes.
have you called in before?
0, but
Nice.
I'm incredibly long time. I still have my Seder on Sunday sticker on a notebook.
Wow. I didn't even know we made
that's
this. I forgot about that. There you go.
Yeah. Well, one of my best friends used to be your producer, Lauren. So
I think we're going to have Lauren Kirchner
on next week, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Her triumphant return.
That's right. That's
Yep.
right. I'm very much looking forward to it. She told me about it.
She may
but I
have
wanted
made
to
up
call
her
in about-
own. She may have produced her own stickers and been selling them on the side. I got to talk to
That's
her
a
about that because
hustler.
I don't think we had stickers.
You know, you really should. She might be sitting on a mountain of swag. There might be some, Sam could have been somebody, mugs,
You got to watch for people doing their like counterfeit merch.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
No,
I'm
there's
supposed
a
to
lot of- yeah.
scour the internet for anybody doing bootleg stuff. Sorry.
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, and it turns out
You
to
really-
be Matt.
You really
Yeah,
dropped the
nobody's.
ball.
No, I didn't come across any. It's like a Dick Cheney
Yeah.
situation. Like, just found me was the vice president. That was it. All right, go ahead.
Yeah. Check out majority.am for no, I wanted to call. So this happened a while ago, but I'm not good at staying on hold. But it's another instance of a small town school board takeover, waging a culture war. So in this middle school in my town, which is a small town in northern Rhode Island, Smithfield, there was a new teacher this year there. She's a math teacher. She's Muslim. I'm not sure what country she's from, but I mean, she graduated here. She grew up, not in America, but I believe she is a citizen now. There was a white science teacher who started to notice that kids were saying some pretty awful things about her and her husband, calling her husband a terrorist, making fun of her accent, making fun of her headscarf. And this white science teacher went to the principal, went to the administration, said, you got to do something about this. And they kind of hand waved it and said, yeah, sure, we will. I think they were hoping it would just cool down, and it didn't. Kids that, were not doing well in the math class kind of ramped up their insults and stuff. Science teacher went to the administration again and said, please, we have to talk to them because the math teacher, the Muslim math teacher is coming to her every day crying, saying, I can't just do my job. Long story short, the science teacher decided she would take it into her own hands, have a talk with the class. She said, I don't think these are 13-year-olds. I don't think you know what you're saying, but you're saying racist things. I'm not saying that you're racist, but you need to think about this. And, the only reason I know this is because ultimately she had a public hearing as to whether or not she could keep her job. And she decided to make it public, which I think was a great move on her part. So it's all on video. But she was ultimately fired by a vote of 5-0 by the school board because some parents called in and said, hey, how dare you call my kids racist? The interesting thing about the school board here is that they actually run on party lines. And the balance shifted this last election from 3-2 Democrat to, 3-2 Republican. Now, it was 5-0. I'm not sure it would have mattered. But yeah, so now she's got a lawyer, but she's lost her job because she decided to stick up for a colleague who literally couldn't do her job, and is now fighting to try and get it back.
And how's the town reacting? I mean, where is this in Northwest Rhode Island?
It's in Smithfield. Yes, it's northern. It's like 15 minutes from Attleboro on the Massachusetts side.
Okay.
It's
I mean, I know I've been. Mixed. I bet. I mean, that's it gets a lot more backwards there than I think people can appreciate. Yes.
Yeah. No. I mean, Rhode Island is very strange politically. You've got a lot of Democrats in our state house that have A+ ratings from the NRA, and Speaker of the House that was trying to stop them from codifying Roe versus Wade. So the politics are very strange here. The town reaction, I would say, is mixed. I would say parents who have kids in that school, the science teacher is beloved, and a lot of them are freaked out because they felt what the science teacher did was right and was not nearly offensive. But you've also got this is Trump definitely won this town.
Yeah.
And you've got a lot of conservatives here. The three new Republicans on the school board, all in their profiles in the local paper talked about getting back to real American education, parental rights. And so, I don't know. It seems
the
like
Klansmen.
It seems exactly. Yeah. They're Klansmen in a suit. Yeah. I mean, it seems like the sense I get, and I'm fairly new here. I'm from Queens originally, so it's been quite a shock going from the most diverse place on earth to here. But it seems like that classic thing where if someone has a kid in the school who loved that teacher, they're freaked out by this and they don't like it. And then people on the outside they were like, well, she shouldn't have called the kids racist.
Right.
And she never called them directly racist. She said, you are saying racist things. And the last thing I'll say is, the superintendent, the teacher said only 2 parents called it, which I believe that. The superintendent said there were 20.
I mean, this is why there has to be this is why people have to get more involved on a local level because this is what's happening on a local level. I mean, I have experience in sort of I guess you cross the border, south of Worcester into Rhode Island and, the northwest, northeast Connecticut. But this area is, you get into small rural areas and hating on people who are not white is a pastime, right? And this teacher, it sounds like, was very gentle with these kids who they should know are racist. But it's
solid education there.
It's nice of her to say that they're saying racist things. It's probably the best way to talk to kids at that age.
Well,
probably
they can turn it around.
Exactly. But I mean,
absolutely. And that was the thing. Some of the kids voluntarily wrote apology letters to the math teacher.
I mean,
the science teacher didn't say you have to do this. Some of them said, "Oh crap." I didn't realize.
There's evidence of this being effective, but this is what we're seeing. Yeah. I mean, this is what it's about. It is offensive to point out our racism now. And, I'm sure there'll be a lot of cancel culture people who are going to come in and defend this science teacher. I can't wait.
Absolutely.
I'm sure Barry Weiss has got reporters on the ground right now talking about this.
This is Loudoun County all over again.
JR in Philly writes in, this is a good point. Where's the teachers union? A little bit. I mean, I don't know about
the union. I'll say the union, for some reason, there's 2 teachers unions in Rhode Island. One is very, teacher focused, and one is very friendly with the state. And for some reason, the one in Smithfield is the one that's very friendly with the state. So I agree, they've been terrible on this. They've been totally silenced.
Yeah, name them.
I'll find it. All I am after this.
It's either the NEA or the AFT. I think are the 2.
It's not AFT.
Okay.
It's not the AFT. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, appreciate the call, and maybe send a link at majorityreporters@gmail.com. We'll follow that story.
Yeah, sure. I'll send you the video of the hearing.
All right.
Thank you for the call.
A similar thing happened in the upper Midwest, I think Michigan. I had a tough time finding it because when you search like threats to school and trans people, like it doesn't narrow it down enough for me to find what I'm talking about. But it was one that was talked about by Fox News at one point, and basically these threats kept coming in because they were told like, hey, stop bullying this trans kid. And some parents were backing up their kids as they're basically threatening school to the point where it had to close because of bomb threats.
I mean, when he said that part about how some of the students wrote apology letters, like, you know what it's like when you're a kid and like maybe you had racist parents or your friends are racist. You might do something that you're not proud of. And then when you're called out on it, it's called what a teachable moment is. It's literally the definition of what a teacher's supposed to do because you learn that behavior's not right. But then you have parents that back you up. It's like that's why parental rights in schools is actually just like incredibly harmful because there are a lot of bad parents pulling kids away from the communitarian elements of what public school and school in general is supposed to provide. Which is a learning experience. That's what they got in that situation. And then it's completely nullified.
Whatever happened to safe space? Like, I mean, that's what this is, right? This
Of
is
course,
snowflakey.
Yeah, right.
But that we don't hear that anymore. Max from Indy, Sam, I got into Blue Sky today, and there is a user with your name and AI-generated profile pic. I'm guessing that is not you, right? No, it is me. I did that, one of those like AI things. And which I didn't know before I did it, they're using your features for other AI projects.
What?
You put in a couple of pictures of yourself, and then it generates these things. I'm like, oh, this is fun. I'll be riding a horse, or I'll look like this or that, and then you find out afterwards that you just signed away basically the rights to your image.
Okay, good thing I haven't done that.
Yeah. Call from a 301 area code. Who's this? Where you calling from? How many times have you called in? 301.
Is this me?
Yes, it is you.
Me?
Yes, you.
All right. First time getting through.
Okay.
I'll put it that way.
All right. Fair. I don't know how else you would put it, but that's fair. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
I'm from Maryland.
From Maryland. And what's your name?
Ibrahim. Ebe.
Okay. Ebe from Maryland. What's on your mind, Ebe?
My phone keeps on misbehaving. I apologize.
All right. Apologies.
So I'm going to go rapid fire with your permission, and I will hang up and take it all off air.
Okay, good.
So good?
Yep.
Okay. Number one, Matt. Carlos Castaneda, literary hangover. Any interest? Number two, to the gentleman who called in yesterday, I'm another one of the Majority Report Christian listeners. I don't know what happened yesterday. It's none of my business. I don't know if you were right or you're wrong. You're not alone, brother. I'll put it that way. And number three, Emma and Bradley, curious about your thoughts on John Morant's suspension, the 25 games. Also curious about, what's it called? U.S. beating Mexico 3-0 last night.
I can't speak to that.
Okay.
Well, but I can say,
4.
I mean, I'm glad John Morant was not suspended for more.
Wait, you're jumping ahead.
Oh,
in line.
sorry.
You gotta,
Sorry.
I'm supposed to hang up. I'm supposed to hang up before you answer.
I got excited.
Number next. I have the I Am Named Baltimore Live show. I'm not very clever, so you rarely read my stuff. I'm trying to convince you to come to Baltimore for a live show, hence the name. Number next Baltimore. Would be, it's pretty great. Charm City, baby. At any rate, I live in a very conservative area of Western Maryland, and one of my best friends, die-hard conspiracy theorist, Trump, Pizzagate, believed it all, and he loves to send me stuff about one of the Burisma whistleblowers has now committed suicide, quote unquote. So that's very interesting. Number next would be Left is Best as an RN who's worked through the pandemic. Back to the gentleman who called in yesterday, my faith has brought me through some hard times. Also, the community and the Majority Report has brought me through some hard times, and the scar tissue PTSD that I still deal with from the pandemic. But that's all I got. Left is best, and I'm looking forward to listening to your narration of the book, Sam.
All right.
And that's all I got.
Appreciate the call.
Have a good one. Bye.
That's the way I like it. Got all his ducks lined up in a row.
Very organized.
Number 1, Carlos Castaneda.
I never read.
All right. Literary hangover. So cross that off.
I already said the John Moran thing, so we can skip that.
The John Moran thing. The MR Christian listener in the Discord. Not alone. I only heard a little bit about that. I think we got a call that people are saying on the IM from whatever Discord moderator. So maybe we can hear the backstory there. I mean, broadly speaking, I consider myself somewhat religious. The problem is a fundamentalism when it's being imposed on other people. It doesn't mean that I think that Christian people should not be able to express themselves and, their appreciation for religion. I am of the mind, like Desmond Tutu, who Janine and I interviewed back in the day, said that religion is like a knife. You can use it to spread butter, and you can use it to stab somebody in the face. He didn't say face. I added that part. And so, that is, that's the issue there, but we'll take that.
And I'd say the moderators have explained themselves on the Discord. If people want further, their side of the story, I think probably Discord's the best place for that rather than another call.
All right, fair enough. Live Baltimore show. We don't look at the IMs beforehand, so I don't ever judge the IMs as to whether they're boring or not. Live Baltimore show, even the handles. Maybe the handle I see, like psychologically, Live Baltimore show.
It should be Baltimore Live show.
Maybe it is. I don't. I might have wrote it down wrong.
Right.
I mean, we're talking about maybe doing one again in the fall in Brooklyn. It's just it's tricky. It's tricky,
I would prefer Baltimore to DC, though. No offense to DC, but
yes,
definitely.
I've been to
Baltimore's
Baltimore's
a way more fun town. You get great seafood. You can go down to the water there. It's like
cheaper to put everybody up,
and that's
the bottom line right there. I mean, it's
all right.
Who's kidding who? But it's also a function of like, can we take a train there? Is it quick?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Boston was good. And it was nice to go back to Boston. But it's like travel. I find it weighs on me probably more than it should.
Well, and let's just do Brooklyn.
Let's see. West Maryland, Pizzagate, Burisma committed suicide. Yes. Well, I mean, we know who did that.
Hunter.
No.
Oh,
come on.
Sorry.
Hillary Clinton.
Oh, right. I forgot.
She's the paid assassin.
She's the assassin. Yeah.
She's the one who does that stuff. And then left is best. All right. Okay. Got it. Calling from a 601 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, is that me?
Yes. Who's this? Where are you calling from? How many times have you called in?
This is my first time calling. I'm Steven from somewhere in Mississippi because I'd rather not anybody find me down here. It's kind of funny. I wanted to talk about fundamentalism.
Please do.
Bit. And the left's kind of point of view on it is a little bit skewed.
Okay.
I'm a leftist. I'm progressive here. And I've been homeless a couple times in my life. So when I talk about this, I come from a place of experience.
Okay.
And that is, there's a fundamentalist part of this country that does not want any sort of humanitarian help to come from anything but the church. They don't want to help the homeless unless it's through the church. They don't want to help the hungry unless it's through their food programs. They don't want to help the mentally ill unless it's from a source of the church or God. And if you aren't willing to bow to their faith, you're not worth the help.
Right.
And that is really a big reason why so many people stand up against these social programs like Social Security and Medicaid and Medicare. They don't like that because it takes the power out of their hands to dictate who gets the help. and they don't want to help people that don't believe in what they believe in. They don't want to do anything for people that don't believe what they believe in. You know, they'll either want you to hide or they'll demonize you.
And to be clear, this is from your experience in seeking help from them when you were unhoused.
And I've been home. Yeah, when I've been unhoused, when I've been homeless, you know, a couple times in my life. You know, you go to stand in line for hours on end and come in to eat something, and you have to go through a sermon and a prayer, you know, about how evil you are half the time. And the other half of the time, it's like I think just to get eat or get housing for a night, I've probably been baptized half dozen times, you know, just to get through it, you know.
Right.
And it's like, why does it have to be like that?
Yeah.
Why do we keep seceding this ground for humanitarian help to these so-called charities that get exceptions when they spend half that money to shut down any secular help and any secular charity out there, you know?
I mean, I agree with you. It is a real problem, and we heard it articulated by Betsy DeVos in the context of education. I mean, she and her husband were interviewed years and years ago, way before she became Secretary of Education, and said, "I don't have a problem with public schooling. I have a problem with public schools." And by that, what she means is collect the taxes for schooling and then give it to religious, schools. Is really what she was about. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, there's a hostility, I think. I don't think it's true of every religious organization by any stretch, but there is a hostility towards secular services because it is a challenge to, you know, their existence. I mean, look, a lot of these religions also, you know, require or highly pressure for tithing, which is essentially their taxation. You have competing taxation systems, right? I mean, but yeah, I appreciate that perspective. I hope you're in better shape right now.
Well, there's one other aspect to it, you know, that really goes to the heart of the fundamentalist ideal, you know, and it comes to a couple questions.
Go ahead.
What is the rent like in the kingdom of heaven? What do they use for money there? What do, you know, what's the choir get paid? You know, why is it that their ideal heaven is essentially the Marxist paradise that they constantly deride? You know, why is it the place that they ascribe to go to, you know, is the thing that they want to dine to every other human being?
Well, I mean, because it can basically keep you from looking for that now.
Yes, right. Your time on Earth, you're there to suffer, but it'll all be worth it because then you get to the Marxist paradise.
Pie in the sky when you die.
In heaven. That's very well said, caller. Thank you.
Appreciate the call.
All right, thank you. Bye.
Thanks.
Orwell has is a book. Is kind of a stunt, but it was down and out in Paris and London, and he basically lived like a unhoused person, and talked about that of like places you go for help are like churches, and they'll make you sit through like a big long scolding, sermon before they give you like the bare sustenance.
Yeah.
That's their mission.
Or drug testing in certain cities. Religious institutions will often like require you to be clean or for a certain period of time before you get help or housing. But they did the study in Houston. When you remove those prerequisites, the outcomes are obviously better because when you get housing first, a lot of the other things follow.
Calling from an 828 area code. I've been told that this is a moderator from the Discord. 828?
Yes, this is me, DJ Cold Case from the Discord.
DJ Cold Case from the Discord. I don't want to get too into the whole thing, but let's.
No, it's not. It's not. You know. Well, to preface this, 10 out of 10 therapists agree that my life sucks, and you're not allowed to be mad at me.
There you go.
Now I can address the allegations of anti-Christian discrimination. he was praying quietly in the voice chat. You would think that's innocent, but some of the members started convulsing and foaming at the mouth, and someone tried asking him to stop, but then he went into this whole thing of complaining about gays, making gayness their identity.
So it wasn't religious
conversation.
stuff. It was more just it was complaining about the way that he perceived gay people in his life, or broadly speaking.
Yeah, just gays, kind of like a love the sinner, hate the sin type thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not here for that.
Yeah, I feel like that has been articulated.
Yeah.
We get that idea.
Like the most you can get is what I said yesterday, which is that people should be kind to people who are religious and not go at that as a point of their identity. That doesn't mean accepting their shit about gay people or abortion. And so, I'm sorry, I don't think this is actually a scandal.
But
yeah, no, it's bullshit. And yeah, it is frustrating to me, since we take making this a safe space for queer people very seriously. And I hate when people might get this impression that we've got all these jokers running around instead of the more wholesome kind of joker. You see.
All right. Well, fair enough.
And yeah, I've also got to say that, I've moderated the server for 2 years. The idea that this place is an echo chamber is absurd. Even when they agree, they find ways to disagree with each other. It's just, yeah.
It would be impressive if we had the one outlet for folks from the center left to the left who were in agreement. That would be rather unique in this.
Yeah.
But all right.
That would be something. No, see, that was all a joke. I was actually calling in to promote some of the things we've got happening in the Discord.
All right, do.
We've got, yes, tonight, 7 p.m., we've got arts and crafts. Tomorrow, starting at 1 p.m., I am screening a sci-fi double feature, Gattaca and Twisted Pair. And then we've also got 2 book clubs, I think. There's one for short reads and one for long reads. I think short reads, they're doing On Savage Shores. Long reads is doing Capital, Volume 1. Good luck to those poor bastards. And yeah, people do stuff, impromptu all the time. There's game nights, and people play poker and games and watch stuff together. It's a community. People go here to talk to each other. I think the vibe here, says a lot about the show, that the vibes are as good as they are, since these are self-selecting groups. People tell me all the time that this place is special. They've never seen anything like it.
Well, folks can check it out.
And I think that says a lot. Yeah.
And let me just also say, I appreciate the work you're doing there. I mean, it's
thanks to our mods.
Yeah, thanks to all the mods. Really great work.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, no, I'm proud of this thing that we've made together. Also, I've been meaning to email you about some cider and mead that I wanted to send y'all.
Cider and mead?
What's the easiest? Yeah.
Majority reporters at gmail.com.
Cool.
All right. Thank you. Really appreciate it. And we should just say thanks for the call.
Thank you.
There are right now almost 1,900 people online in the Discord, and we are about less than 100 away from 9,000 members of the Discord. 9,000. So I feel like, if we're getting just, a random complaint here or there, then that's extraordinary.
Yeah, I'm going to need to see just a wave of religious people being discriminated against before I stick my oar in, personally.
Is that some type of euphemism?
stick your oar in?
Yeah, I don't want to hear
Just
about
help paddle. No, it's just it's a canoe metaphor.
And I think, part of the reason why, in particular, right now, there is a sensitivity to providing any tolerance for bigotry against LGBTQ people right now. Or even like there is probably a less of a tolerance. I know I personally have less of a tolerance for like nuanced conversations about this, because if you're unaware, there is an all-out assault on trans people in this country, actually in many places, but not just this country, but this country in particular. And it is also a way to strike at gay people too.
Yeah, and it's working. I just want, if you guys could put this chart up, because it's actually, I mean, you can keep going here, Sam, but just the fact that this is not just an assault on trans people. Ben Collins of NBC posted this. This is from Gallup. But look, I mean, this was in 2002,
2022. Oh, sorry.
No,
sorry,
but in 2002, around 40% of Americans thought that gay or lesbian relations were morally acceptable. And you saw that continue to tick up as being gay in society became more widely accepted. Gay marriage became the law of the land. And that's 2022 at its peak, drop to like, a few percentage points. The first time you've really seen that, I guess.
7% drop. I mean, that's not nothing, but it's the idea that it's going in that direction is a direct result of the propaganda campaign. And let's play, this religious bigot, Michael Knowles, who apparently after, having his acting career, and like the only thing I think he got on tape was a gay scene in a movie, and maybe it's like somehow like harmed himself. He's too traumatized by it. But here is Michael Knowles talking about the pride flag. This is where we're at now.
She says her daughter felt coerced to participate in the Pride event and was offended by some of the messages, like this quote from Tennessee Williams.
Human heart cannot be straight. It is curves and winds. And my daughter just kind of said, Mom, that's offensive to me, who I am straight.
Yeah. Pause it. I got news for you. There is no kid who's saying
chance.
like, that's offensive to me. No, it's not.
And can we just check the news chyron there?
Burlington hosts town meeting after middle school's pride decorations were destroyed. Yeah, the middle schooler really took a stand on that moral stand. This woman is in like the trend of many, like I feel like online mom influencers. They'll often do it for more innocuous reasons. Like, look at this thing my child said that was so profound. You're like, your child's 3. There's no chance they said that. This one's just for her reactionary political agenda.
And again, I mean, let's be clear. I don't know what the polling would be on the how valid or how accepting are you of heterosexual relations, but we know it's not 71% like it was in 2022 and 64% like it is today, and going down. And so the idea that we might need to convince people, and it's convinced. It's not an ideology. It is don't have intolerance and hate for other people because they're living their life in a way that is different than yours. I mean, that's it was at time non-controversial view, and it's being made controversial by bigots like this guy. Go ahead.
Human heart cannot be straight. It is curves and winds. And my daughter just kind of said, Mom, that's offensive to me, who I am straight.
Yeah, that flag is offensive to all normal people. It is a symbol of pride, the deadliest of the 7 deadly sins. It obviously has no place in a middle school classroom, and frankly, it should be banned from all public spaces because it's evil and degenerate and signifies an ideology that is contrary to truth, goodness, beauty, and reality. And it is an indictment of our political order that the warmed-over hippies and other deviants running our schools need to learn that lesson from 11-year-olds. That is very sad.
I mean, let's just this is the way, this was the plan, this is the pushback. I think Candace Owens, I saw online, was talking about, again, you'll hear them, I think Matt Walsh has done this too, where they say we should not, and Crowder, we should not have just stood by idly as the society accepted gay marriage, because this is what happens. Then all of a sudden you have to accept gay marriage and gay people and trans people, and that's what's going on here.
Yeah, I mean, look, Michael Knowles embodies more deadly sins than just pride, though, if we're doing a tally there. I mean, pretty sure he embodies some greed as a right-winger. Pretty sure he embodies...
Is vanity one of them? I don't know.
Envy, perhaps gluttony is another one of them. I think we could go down the list and see what he embodies, as opposed to, like, what pride is supposed to be, which is a backlash against bigots like you. That's why pride is necessary in that instance, honestly, to counteract your pride and your immorality.
Should also say hearts. I don't know if you've ever seen a picture of a heart. They do not, they don't have straight lines. They literally are curved, and I mean literally are curved.
Well, I mean, the what's threatening to that mom there is like maybe their kid who apparently has a very developed sense of their own straightness might actually come to question that at some point at a later date.
And it's not just, the point is that it's not just questioning their own personal straightness.
Right.
The idea is if you have been raised in a home that has told you that it's a binary, there are black and white answers to this, that, a woman does this, a man does that. That's the way God intended. And we are to do this and not that, because that's the way God has intended it. And that's the way it is. And then they get out of their home and they start to see, like, hey, wait a second. I thought black people were this way, or I thought gay people were that way, or I thought, brown people were this way. And they go out and their own experience is different. Or they hear different ideas. It is a threat to the entire hierarchy that they have been raised in. So it's not just a threat to the possibility of their sexuality. That may not be it. It may be just like, once you see that this is wrong, and you have been in a household that is absolute, then all of a sudden you start questioning other premises.
Yeah.
And that's how people get out of fundamentalist religion. That's how people get out of cults.
Yeah.
That's how people get out of like super, strident small organizations that, have a very hard top-down perspective on the world. I mean, and that's why you must prevent them from hearing this stuff.
Yeah.
That's why they do it. I mean, and the irony is, of course, is like they're constantly complaining about, a battle of ideas. And it is not an idea that I'm going to hate someone or that they have no right to exist because they're not as my principles say they should be.
Well, they've lost the battle of ideas on this front. That chart that I just, from Gallup makes it clear that's lost. I mean, it's going to tick down because their backlash is working, but that's why like they focus so much on censoring like a Disney cartoon or a school classroom that they're trying to suppress.
Disciplining the culture to try to put the cat back in the bag.
And let's play as Michael Knowles. I mean, this is why he wants to go back to
another Michael
1220 Genghis Khan era, by the way.
Oh, that's what he's nostalgic for?
I mean, what was happening with the Catholic Church at that time? I mean, I think that's honestly is where he's going. There's something that he's got in his bonnet. Let's listen to this.
Americans are as conservative today as they were back in 2012, which is fine, and it's a good start given how much more liberal the country had become since 2012. But if 2012 is the end point, then we might as well pack it in, guys. I do not want America to be as socially conservative as it was in 2012. I want our civilization to be as socially conservative as we were in 1220. Okay, forget it. I don't even want the 1950s. I don't even want the 1880s. I want 1220. I think that would be a good spot to land at. At the very least, I think we ought to be as conservative as we were before all the modern ideologies started corroding our civilization. Because that's been the big problem. The reason that a lot of people for a long time became more socially conservative, more open, more tolerant, is because they had the pillars of our civilization to rely upon. The church, the family, the productivity, the
women being property,
political order, the institutions,
the lack
system
of
law.
reformation.
We had all of that to rely upon. And so we were just leaning on that while we were indulging in an ideology that was eroding all of that. This is the thing about liberalism, is liberalism, including the old classical liberalism, it's just like an acid that you pour onto your civilization. And I don't know, maybe you like it. Maybe it's like lysergic acid, maybe it's like a drug or something. People kind of like this acid for a while, but it just starts to eat away at the thing upon which it must rest.
The tranquilizing drug of liberalism versus the sustaining healthiness of feudalism.
The idea that he probably doesn't know, but no Reformation, would barely know anything of physics, pretty basic stuff.
No algebra.
I'm trying to think of what else we would.
No modern medicine, surgery.
No enlightenment.
Yeah, no enlightenment.
Certainly.
Yeah. I get to be property again.
Genuine property.
No,
like full on, going. Yeah, no, you'd be sold more or less for a dowry or
cool.
some type of
and
thing,
wasn't
some
it
type
like
of trade.
back then? Also, it was considered like more sinful to masturbate than it was to rape a woman because at least your seed was going inside of her at that point.
I think that was probably very recently.
They had their best
Michael
logicians
Knowles'
on
house.
that.
Yeah.
Can Michael Knowles just make that case? Like, if he wants, he's trying to flip, 2012 and be flipping about it.
He's being maximalist for attention.
But I get, and that's what you have to do when you're not that talented. But at the same time, though, I want him to spell it out, as opposed to just trying to be smirky and cute about it. Talk about what the practical realities of what you're advocating for are.
Right,
then,
and
Michael.
even just go back
intellectual Daily Wire correspondent, whatever the hell you are.
Just even go back to 1920 and walk us through the issues that you have with liberalism. Or let's just go to 1820 and just walk us through the past 200 years that you think is problematic in this country. Well, we'd also include democracy, probably, would even some semblance of one.
Oh, I'm dying for the time when a rat being in my home had like a 50-50 chance of killing me. I would love for that to come back.
I apologize for saying algebra wasn't in Europe. It had got there in the relatively later years of the 12th century, of course. It was an import from the Islamic world.
Yes. Also wasn't
condescension.
Brain surgery there, too. Well,
all right.
It's appropriate.
Final call of the day. I don't know why I did that horns. I usually don't do it for the calls. I call from a 916 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? How many times have you called in?
I've never called in before. This is Billy from Sacramento. I am actually originally.
Good job.
I'm originally from Baltimore, so it was fun hearing someone from there before. I am she/her trans, and I wanted to talk about what hormones are doing to my body and how ridiculous it is for this sports debate.
Okay, let's hear it.
Well, one thing you can tell from my voice is that dumping estrogen in me doesn't change my voice. Any trans woman you hear with a feminine voice, she's putting in work, so give her respect for that.
Okay.
But also, I'm not just doing estrogen. I have to take testosterone blockers. And testosterone in a man's body naturally keeps up the muscle tone. And without that, I'm much weaker. I have like no stamina whatsoever, and I have to put in the work to keep that up at all. When there's a trans woman in sports, she's busting her ass to even be there.
Mm-hmm. And can I
And
ask, your name's Billy, right?
Yeah, yes.
Billy, what age were you when you started your hormone therapy?
I'm actually pretty new. I started about 8 months ago.
Okay. Do you mind if I ask what age range you are at right now?
I'm 44.
44. Gotcha. Yeah.
And it's different it's different when you start very young, but a lot of us do start older, and a lot of us go through a huge downswing for this stuff.
This is why it's so important to start this at a young age, for kids to have access to this. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yes. No, you're completely right. It's super important for kids to, like, I wish I had known. I wish I had understood, so I understood what I was, so that I could have possibly started something earlier. But it is definitely important for kids to start this early so that they can live their lives completely normal and not go through the difficulties later in life. Even with my voice, it's amazing how much I can dress and quote unquote pass, but as soon as I say something, like I'm walking by somebody and I say excuse me and they hear my voice, whole different attitude. It's very frustrating. But I also want to thank you, and especially you, Emma, for what you've been doing lately and what you've been saying lately, including what happened with the other network that makes things very difficult to continue to support because their chats are really toxic now to people like me.
I'm sorry to hear that.
But,
yeah, me too.
Yeah. It sucked.
Billy, let me ask you this. I mean, your decision to transition was just because you wanted all the benefits that trans people get in
the class
society,
privilege.
obviously. And it was obviously just because of, something you saw on TV or something. But honestly, how early in your life, and you just mentioned that you weren't aware of your options. How early in your life did you feel like there was something wrong? And then when did you become aware that trans people were a thing?
I became aware of trans people as a thing as an adult, but even as a kid, especially once I became aware of who I am, I constantly looked back and be like, oh, that explains this line of thought, that explains, little TMI, but I've always dissociated during sex, and I didn't realize what was going on. I was like, why can't I keep my mind on this? And it caused a lot of easy issues. Stuff like that has always been there. I used to be married. I also had a lot of conversations with her about what I would do if I transitioned my body, just casual conversations without fully understanding what was going on in my head. And it's not always something that you feel it, but you don't know what it is. And for me, I fought most of my life trying to be what people thought a man should be. I tried to be what a man should be in a relationship, and it didn't work. It never really worked, and it felt like shit.
When was the first time that you were aware that something was off?
I mean, I feel like I always knew. But
when you were a little kid, was it when do you remember an incident when you were, if there was one? I wanted to play with my sister's Barbies when they weren't around. I sat down to pee as soon as I was left alone in a bathroom. Stuff like that. Just I always knew that I can always remember forcing myself to sit less feminine.
Yeah.
So when did you start to feel like was there? I assume that if you're making yourself sit less feminine, there's some element of shame that you're feeling at that time. Like when did that, like how prominent was that in
the feeling of shame?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if I could say when it was, because it just always was. It's like, so I'm from Baltimore. I'm black, and black communities tend to be more conservative. So it was always like, you got to be like this. You got to be like a boy.
In terms of
One of the
masculinity.
things I'm feeling
Right.
Yeah, one of the things I feel right now is like, so in Sacramento, my best friend's still living in Baltimore, and he's still dealing with like the forced masculinity. Even though he's not trans, he still feels like he has to be a certain way, or people will give him grief about it.
Yeah.
So that kind of stuff's always like, it's hard for me to answer that question because I couldn't pinpoint a time when. I can pinpoint a lot of times in my adult life when I really started to understand things.
Right.
But I can't really pinpoint a moment in childhood because I just know it was always there.
Right.
Do you think that if right now we're going through a particularly difficult time, I think, in terms of like trans acceptance, because there's an active, massive portion of society that is trying to demonize trans people. But do you think if there was a greater awareness 20 years ago when you were in your early 20s, do you think you would have transitioned earlier? Or do you think
yes.
Okay.
So honestly, I really wish that as awful as the world is right now, as awful as the world is towards trans people, this experience is amazing. This experience is fantastic. And I feel like so many people could learn so much from listening to people that, for one thing, have been on both sides of having these hormones in our heads. Like, I can't tell you the benefit to my mental health being on estrogen has given me. This clarity of thought, this breadth of emotion, this feeling like myself and not feeling like I'm overly charged. Like even my own sister says, I don't sound angry anymore. And I didn't even realize how much I had sounded like just tense and angry all the time. If people knew more about the actual experience of transitioning, I feel like people would. I just wish people would listen more instead of just being so angry and hateful. And even the people that are on our side, I wish would listen more instead of making their own assumptions and like, hey, and this is what the science says. I'm like, does the science say that, or do you think it says that? There's.
Well, I mean, what you started this call with is exactly what I think a lot of advocates have been trying to say, but it is the image that is being conjured in people's minds on purpose by right-wing commentators is like they use LeBron. If LeBron tomorrow decided that he wanted to transition, would you let LeBron into the WNBA or whatever? And like, obviously, this is, I mean, well, yes. And then
WNBA might be like, well, let's look at how this transition goes, and we might want a big earner to come help.
Honestly, yeah.
Right. Like, I go ahead.
No. I mean, the point is just that it is a series of multiple freaking layers of bullshit that you have to wade through to get to the reality that you describe, which is that even though you're in your 40s and you're transitioning right now, the effects of your therapy it nullifies so much of like the scaremongering that the right brings up about women's sports. But of course, that's the point of it.
They don't care. They don't care.
They don't care.
They don't care about.
I know.
They don't care about physicality at all.
Colin, the other thing that
I'm sorry.
I just want to pick up on something. You talk about how like positive this experience is for you. I have a friend who socially transitioned to he/they recently and wasn't experienced necessarily like gender dysphoria, but upon like having that realization, which was sparked in part by like certain questions we had performed, and he had about himself. A non-binary person, assigned female at birth, came up to him at a concert and assumed he was non-binary. And he was and he liked that assumption, and spent the next few months like exploring that. And like when you actually see that happen for somebody, it takes all this mystification and all this all these reactionaries that are in their cloistered little reactionary. They're never going to experience knowing someone like that because they hate them out of their lives.
That's what we call a gender euphoria moment, and when those hit, they are amazing. The first time I had other women approach me without me explaining anything about myself and treat me like a woman was amazing. I remember I was at my dispensary talking. The first thing I did to express my femininity outdoors was my fingernails because I'm good at painting, and I was in a conversation with the woman behind the counter, and when it got to the fact that I was trans, I got to watch her entire demeanor change, and she let down the guard that she does when she's just talking to a random man and started talking to me as a woman. And it was like the highlight of my month and year, and I will never forget it, or moments like that. Those moments are the most amazing things in the world when this is getting answers to questions we didn't know we had.
That's fascinating.
And having these things resolved are just, it's like I said, it is an amazing experience. And if the world weren't so shitty, it would just be grand as hell. It's just
absolutely
so frustrating.
And it tears families apart because my friend is not going to be able to share that part of his, new understanding of his identity with the family that loves him in Minnesota because they've been poisoned away from any kind of understanding like that. And that is why I can't stand when people treat this like it's some sort of intramural, abstract thing. Like this is actively causing an intense amount of harm for people.
Yeah. I'm lucky in that my family, they don't fully get it. They really don't, but they try. They try, and they still love me, and they support me. They're 3,000 miles away, which is not the most fun thing, but I'm lucky with that. I'm lucky I have a ton of support. I have professional voice actor friends that are going to be helping me with my voice. Like, I'm very, very lucky with the support that I have, and it scares me that there are so many people that don't have any of that.
Well, Billy,
and I just wanted to say thank you for taking this call because there's not a lot of trans callers, and I feel like this kind of stuff needs to be heard more. The positivity of what we go through and what it does for us and those around us. And like, I took my first selfie that I ever liked not too long ago, and my neighbors who see me every day, they saw that and they were like, "That's cute." But everyone who hadn't seen me in a while, like when I put it online, they were like, "You look so relaxed. You look happy." It was night and day for them to see how much better I am as me than what I was.
Billy, really appreciate the call. Thank you so much.
Thank you for taking it.
Calling anytime. I should say, someone just sent me this trailer yesterday. Kokomo City. It is directed by D. Smith. It opens in July, end of July. It's the story of, I don't know, a couple, maybe more black trans women. So just to keep on your radar. Oh, Daniel Ellsberg passed away, I think. Someone just said R.I.P. Daniel Ellsberg.
Damn, we got to do maybe a retrospective.
Yeah,
we've had him on a couple times.
Yeah, I think at least twice. Once at in the old Majority Report days. In fact, he came in into studio with Janine and I. Maybe we should try and find that, and then also find the other one. Maybe we can play that actually next in when we're off. Find both those. The thing about him was he was like, I mean, in addition, and we had a great interview with him about, I think another book he wrote. I can't remember what the occasion was, but he was telling these stories that were pretty amazing. But the thing about Ellsberg was like, he loved to do magic. This is going to sound weird. I know it's going to sound weird, but
I was not expecting
no,
that.
I know.
Documents disappear?
No, he was not at all like you would expect. I don't know what people would have in their heads as to like what he was like as a person, but he was sort of like, just sort of, he had like big dad energy.
Oh, yeah.
Older dad energy. And we went out for a drink with him, with like a couple of us, not just Janine and I, but a couple other people. And he was doing magic the whole time. Like magic tricks. It was hilarious.
surreal. It must have been.
I mean, it was a little bit like, that's not what I expected. He would be like, he was just an incredibly,
I mean, to have this news with the Espionage Act being in the news like this, I mean, this is somebody who actually put their life in like multiple times in precarious positions for the sake of the country, as opposed to, hoarding documents for personal gain potentially. And we just had, literally yesterday, we just had Kerry Howley on to talk about whistleblowers and the nature of what information really means in a 21st century in particular, where the government hoards everything and can craft a narrative for you. Ellsberg was one of the OGs in that area.
Taking 10,000% what the previous trans caller said about the benefits of hormones. It's just been a complete shift in my mental processing and has made me so much happier and healthier. Courier 11 second. Can I get a shofar for my grandfather who had his 100th birthday on Wednesday? Sure. All right, let's read some IMs and then we will get out of here. Richard Dreyer, the jackass congressperson who wanted to put work requirements on Section 8 housing vouchers. The whole point of the program is that people who have disabilities that preclude work still need housing. It's ridiculous. Some people have no arms and no legs. They still need a place to live. Arbeit macht frei should be the slogan attached to these congressional ghouls. Sky Daddy Martyr Complex. Dear Mr. Seder, I'd like to issue a formal complaint about how your staff treated me yesterday. I called in to comment on your Discord server, a service that you don't run and I don't pay for. I was recently removed due to a disagreement over my irrational thoughts about Invisible Sky Man who spies on judges us all.
It's a parody.
I called in yesterday to complain your staff was rude and abusive, not at all what I would expect from people who claim to be so tolerant. I request you investigate this very serious matter and await your formal response. Look, folks, I know this was a joke, but we're not going to address, Discord injustice.
Twitch chat injustice will make time for it, but
yeah, it's
petty.
We're just not doing that. But we would also not, but yeah, okay. Jonathan Armstead, two things. Will there be a show Monday for Juneteenth? Yes. Who do we have on? Amani Perry, right. Amani Perry will be here. And can I plug a Black History project I work on? Yes. I have a YouTube channel called Black Jeopardy Misses. I watch Jeopardy each day, and when all contestants blank on a question of Black history, I put up a monthly compilation. That is amazing.
You should send us one you think is particularly funny.
Yeah, send us a link to that. That's amazing. That's a great idea. Black Jeopardy Misses.
I like using Jeopardy as a platform to do sociology.
Right. Well, that was an SNL sketch, Black Jeopardy, right?
People have been unaware on who Dave Chappelle is, that Malcolm X did a pilgrimage to Mecca, that MLK was against the war in Vietnam. It's cringy, although I think Ron DeSantis loves it. If you can find it by searching Black Jeopardy Misses on YouTube. New York Post also did a piece on it, and the comments were what you would expect.
Gotcha.
Eddie Munster. Is the oligarch Bigfoot? Rough start for the newbie callers. Living for the canoe metaphor. Cucker Tarlson, retail pharmacist from Chicago here. The ADHD med shortage is caused by a DEA cap in precursor manufacturing. Manufacturers prioritize them to make brand medications, making the shortage of generics worse. Online prescribing and TikTok trends have caused a huge increase in demand since COVID. I consider this a labor issue as well. No one should have to take speed to do their job. It's a bit like steroids in sports. Once your office mates are taking it, you get pressure to get on them as well to keep up.
That is a bit. I mean, I don't feel competitive. I don't know if any of you guys have any prescriptions, but I react well to Adderall. I know of a couple experiments, and for that reason, I've been afraid to like actually get a prescription because I don't want to be hooked on it. But it's been crazy. Like the last year, you can see Instagram ads being like, "Oh, you need some Adderall."
That's what's so crazy. Yeah, those.
How do people sell those?
Telehealth things.
It's the telehealth.
Yeah, it's essentially, and same with, I would guess, Xanax and antidepressants and probably hair loss stuff too, right? Yeah. Viagra, yeah.
Brandon from Kentucky. Taibbi is looking into MR Discord files as we speak. Seriously shady stuff, banning free speech.
That's the one thing I'm a little sad we didn't get to was his tweet, but we
can do that on Monday.
Okay.
Militant apathy. Trump totally has a P-tape. International socialist Matt, before Orwell, U.S. socialist and racist writer Jack London went down and out in London, he wrote a book about his experiences, The People of the Abyss, in 1904. He attacked Sally Army venomously for their treatment of the poor.
That's right. I did remember that.
All right, 5 more. Dr. Strange Kill. I only started listening a year ago. One of the first episodes I caught live was the remembrance of Michael Brooks, and I'm sad I wasn't able to hear his commentary live. Just listened to Against the Web yesterday, and it's clear he was a witty and knowledgeable man. His vision of hope for the future and utter scorn for the faulty and morally bankrupt arguments of the IDW are articulated well. Sam did a great job reading it, though the lack of ERs and US was unfamiliar. There you go. ERs and US, yes. Thanks for providing a daily insight that treat your audience as intelligent and informed as always. Left is best. Thank you. That's a nice note. Shut up, Sean. Regarding 17 calls, I don't know that's an intentional, but it could be a signal for the Q freaks. Q is the 17th letter.
Oh my God! No, it
way.
wouldn't be. But I mean that tip came from who knows, right? Like that tip could have been from a Q freak.
But that's the beauty of numerology is you can kind of retroactively fit anything onto it.
Hey, breaking news: Matt thinks numerology is beautiful.
Sleepy.
For how deceptive.
I'm joking.
Sleepy Mail Dad. What do you think of the odds are Biden pardons Trump in a misguided bid to heal the nation? My God, that would be a horror show.
It's got to be 50-50 if he actually does any time. Biden definitely going to.
You think he will?
Yeah.
Yeah. God. Horrible. After the election.
Yeah. But like, I feel like that's a classic Democrat thing to do.
Ugh. Although, to be fair, it was done by a Republican.
I don't think he'd do that.
Gerald Ford.
Yeah.
He's not going to pardon Trump.
I don't know.
But
That's
even
why I say it's 50-50.
Even his buddy McConnell wants Trump. Like even his Republican friends that he actually respects wants Trump out of there. That's my thought.
That's a good point.
I don't know.
Justice for Hugo. The slope has already been slipped. Netflix removed Community's highly acclaimed Dungeons and Dragons episode because Ken Jeong dressed up like a dark elf.
I don't care.
Reagan in the money. Emma, I can see the reflection of your phone on the MR app from your glasses. As I said, it's all a big conspiracy.
I'm not on the MR app, and I honestly wasn't on my phone today. Not that I'm on it all the time, but not today. So
Demian.
Might be my computer.
Why hasn't Sam been on I Think You Should Leave? Heidecker has been in a few sketches, and I think there's a bit unbalanced without Sam on there.
That's a good point.
What is that? I think
you haven't watched I Think You Should Leave? It's was it Tim Robbins?
Tim Robbins. It's a sketch show.
It's a Netflix sketch show. It's very
Bob
funny.
Odenkirk and I've actually watched.
I think I've seen a couple of those.
Yeah. Me, Brendan, Sam, and I have watched sketches together.
As jaded as you are about Comedy Sam, I think you.
Excuse
would
me,
still
where was I?
I've heard about that.
I think you had left the office. We watched it on this computer.
I just bought my audio version of Against the Web. I've read it before, but now I get to hear the smooth tones of Fenton Muley reading it. That's a oh Jesus! What the hell was the name of that show? The one Brendan. Before it was after Dr. Katz. Home Movies. Really cool. Knesset is top-down, IDF is top-down, Kahanism is both bottom-up and is now a major, near majority in power. Can we get David Sheen on to talk about Kahanism and the Democratic Party? Will you look up that, David Sheen? All right, 2 more. Kowalski. Don't take my call, 308, only listening. 5G service sucks. Early on, somebody told me who was involved, like they have a system where a radio station would do that for cab drivers. And you actually got paid somehow for people hanging on the line. I'm like, how do I get that? Because we pay for
opposed to it costing us money.
Yes. NJ Mailman, 1220 AD, famously a great time to be alive in history. If you were lucky enough to have gold, you call in an apocryphy, basically a wizard who would cover you in leeches and make you drink mercury. Can't wait to go back.
Yep.
And the final I am, ladies and gentlemen, of the week. Let's see. Barnacle Boy. To be fair, the Magna Carta was made in 1215, so there's still just a taste of progressive values in that guy's life.
5 years of the Magna Carta.
Matt, Bradley, Emma, great job today, this week. And we'll see you on Monday.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bar. But finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light's shining bright. I get somewhere the choice was made for the option where you don't get paid.